I think I heard someone else at the door, so we may have another citizen statement.
Ready to go whenever you guys are. So wait till Lori gets back.
What? I'm ready.
We're good? Okay. All right, everybody. The time is now 7:31. I'd like to call to order tonight's study session for the Urbana School Board, Tuesday, October 6th. Could I have a roll call, please?
Member Carter,
Here.
Member Demmett,
Here.
Member Patton. Here. Member Plosky,
Here.
Member Fisher is here, Vice President Exum,
Here.
and President Hall. You're
I'm
muted.
Sorry. I'll say that again. I don't believe we have any additions, corrections, and modifications for tonight's agenda, so I will move into citizen statements. But before I do, I have a couple of things to say. First off, we're going to do things a little bit differently tonight to try and keep the flow of traffic moving. We have a few in-person statements, so we're going to toggle those back and forth between in-person and ones who have been emailed to us to save time. And then second of all, I would like to just reiterate, because we've had so much public statement in the past several meetings, that I want to remind everyone about board policy 2-230. Remind our public, our audience at home, that this policy governs public participation at Board of Education meetings. Individuals appearing before the board are expected to follow the following guidelines. 1, identify yourself and be brief. Ordinarily, comments shall be limited to 5 minutes, which is why we've set up a timer system just to make sure that we get things moving at a good pace. 2, to observe the board president's decision to shorten public comment to conserve time and give the maximum number of individuals an opportunity to speak. I hope to not have to rely on that too much. I read really fast so I can get everybody's comments in. So my apologies for having to do that. And third, please conduct yourself with respect and civility towards others, and otherwise abide by board policy 830, visitors to and conduct on school property. Urbana School District has always prided itself on offering a public forum for the exchange of thoughtful ideas and civil free speech. While tolerant of all viewpoints, we will not tolerate hateful comments or personal attacks against other presenters.
She's frozen.
Nothing's happening.
Oh, my screen got frozen there for a second. Okay, it looks like I think Lori's bringing in our first public commenter, but I can read one letter first while we're waiting. This is from, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, we did not hear like the last paragraph of the statement.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Okay, that's fine. I will be happy to reread that.
You were frozen for quite a while.
Oh boy. Okay, sorry about my internet connection. I will repeat that last paragraph. Urbana School District has always prided itself for offering a public forum for the exchange of thoughtful ideas and civil free speech. While tolerant of all viewpoints, we will not tolerate hateful comments or personal attacks against other presenters, students, staff, or board members. Speakers who cannot observe these rules will be instructed to conclude their presentation immediately, and the Board of Education will move on to the next speaker. Sorry about that. Okay, our first public comment comes from, I believe it's Samuel Vandegrift. Is that correct, sir? Okay, so you're all set up to speak, and I think you're unmuted, and we'll all mute ourselves, and you can go ahead and say what you need to say. Thank you.
I'm not hearing the speaker.
All I see on my screen is the clock.
And we can't hear the speaker.
Can anybody, can anybody hear him at all when he's speaking now?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, is there and unmuted?
I can hear him, but I don't know if if there's a mute button on the laptop itself that's been pushed for the sound. Sorry, folks, we're having a few technical difficulties. Can anybody else hear you online? Any of the board members hear him?
No.
Nope. Okay. Okay. Well, they could just come and speak to my computer if that would be easier. Or,
This is just technical stuff.
oh, it sounds like you got it working.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear him now.
And Ruth Ann are nodding, yes. Oh, good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I will start over if that's okay. Hello, my name is Sam Vandegrift. So for those of you on the call that missed me saying this already, I want to thank each and every one of you for all the work you're doing for the kids in our district. We are in good hands, and I know that you're taking current events seriously and you're doing the best you can to pivot, as everyone is. As an aside, I think it was kind of a funny little coincidence that we had a technical thing. This is like what it's like going to remote learning some mornings, right? So you got to take it as it comes, and I think a grain of salt is something we all need this time. I'm in opposition of students going back, and I want to offer a little bit of historical perspective on why that is. So during the pandemic 100 years ago, the age group that was the most likely to have mortality were 29 to 31-year-olds. And when I first heard this, it was really interesting. And the research that come out of this is because they had been infected by a pandemic in 1889, sometimes called the Russian flu, that had permanently weakened their immune systems and left them vulnerable to future complications from another pandemic. And I think it is too early to say what the long-term ramifications are going to be from infection of COVID-19. And I would hate for the students of this district, and any district for that matter, to be guinea pigs as we sit down and find out what is going to happen to them. We already know that people who have been infected are continued increased risk for a host of maladies. So I think that's the principal thing that I want to say as far as context on this, which is that we can make decisions with all of the information that we have in good faith, but I think we need to acknowledge that we don't have all the information that we need to make this decision. And I think it puts the parents and grandparents and teachers and administrators and certainly the students at risk in ways that we can't even begin to imagine. So I urge you to not offer even a hybrid model and to keep our kids out of school until it's safe to send them back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Being patient with our technical.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your support.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna try and navigate this mask thing as best I can while I'm reading. Sorry, folks. Okay, we'll be reading one now. If I unmuted myself, I hope you can hear me. All right, next up is a letter from Rachel Heaton. I think I'm hearing myself reverb back, and I don't know if it's from other people's computers or if it's just mine. Anybody else having? Nope. Okay.
No,
I
you're gonna
just-
need to mute the public comment section while you're talking and unmute it when there's someone there to actually talk. That's why
I got it. Okay, Paul, got it.
I think that was it. That was it. Okay, I don't hear it anymore. Thank you. Dear Dr. Avery Tatum, Ms. Williams, and USD 116 board, I just want to register my objection to these definitions of minimal. These definitions look to be arbitrary criteria that have no basis in the amount of harm caused. These are not minimal risks. From where did these criteria originate? Can the source be trusted? If we had a 5 to 10% increase in county cases every 2 weeks during the second quarter, does the district really mean to imply that such an increase would be okay? I certainly hope not. If you look at the county data, right now we're experiencing approximately the same infection rate as when we first decided to go all remote. Even stable numbers are not acceptable, let alone any increase in cases. Furthermore, with respect to the test positivity rate criterion, the board must understand that our county test positive because so many tests are being administered to a subset of the general affiliated with the University of Illinois. That population is overtested, accounting for approximately 2% of all tests in the country, while the rest, I think that meant to say county, while the rest of the county is undertested. That metric is essentially meaningless in this context. Please do not use the low overall county positivity rate as a sign of safety for people who are not affiliated with UIUC. We are supposed to be working together to keep lowering infections so that we can go back without putting anyone at risk. To do anything else would be incredibly irresponsible and would undermine that goal. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Rachel Heaton. Okay, now we have another public statement from Alicia Trezise. I'm going to put my mask back on and hello. You'll be unmuted and you'll be able to speak into the laptop there, and we'll all mute ourselves and you'll just carry on. The 5 minutes timer is there. You'll probably see it on your screen. You're good. Okay, thank you. Go ahead when you're ready.
Wait. I'm trying to unmute her. For some reason, it's not.
She might have to do it at the laptop.
Okay, can everybody hear? Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Ivy Tatum and board members. I'm going to, in a second here, read the statement that we have already shared with Dr. Ivy Tatum, and UEA leadership has had conversations yesterday with Dr. Ivy Tatum and Ms. Norton. So this won't be new to you, but I appreciate the opportunity. I was able to contact some board members to try to have a conversation about this, but I wasn't able to get to all of you yesterday. So I did share the email with this attachment, and the links that I'm going to mention in the statement are in the attachment in your email to our survey data and another thing. So I appreciate the opportunity to read this into the meeting. Dear Dr. Ivory Tatum and USD 116 Board of Education, we, the UEA leadership team, are writing on behalf of our membership. We would like to thank you for including us in the planning meetings thus far. In response to the collection of data from our members in relation to their level of comfort with returning to the building, and in strong response to the transitional hybrid model plans that have been shared with us, we would like to clarify our stance to the current situation. We should begin by stating that we agree that something needs to be done better to support the subgroup of students and families who are not proving successful in our current model. To begin, of the 255 staff members who completed our survey, the anonymous survey data in its entirety is attached for your reference, 51.8% of staff is not at all comfortable to deliver in-person instruction, and is only 40% comfortable to return to in-person, and 40% is comfortable to return to in-person instruction, but also have some concerns. This means that only 8.2% of our staff surveyed are entirely comfortable with a return. Some of the major concerns referenced were personal health and safety, 87%, student health and safety, 85%, and exposure to family members, 82%. This data shows that half of our staff is uncomfortable with return, and the majority of the rest of the staff are looking for a clearly supportive plan for the return to work. Similarly, the factors that led to the board to opt for a full remote at the start of the year have not appreciably changed. Active cases in the county, for instance, are slightly higher. While UEA acknowledges the potential benefits to students with the return to in-person instruction, the two models which have been proposed, modified hybrid option 1 and modified hybrid option 2, do not create optimal teaching and learning conditions for either staff or students. We want to reiterate that the findings of the remote learning subgroup committee teachers that was shared, attached here, we won't rewrite all of them for you, but we will, however, highlight a few of the most critical issues that they list. Again, we acknowledge, support, and agree with these concerns. Student, staff, safety, and health. What is different now than what it was in August? What has changed since the beginning of the school year that would prompt this move? Student equity issues. Because instructional, engagement, assessment, and delivery models are different for in-person and remote learning, the student experience will be fundamentally different. Teacher equity issues. Elementary teachers teaching in person will be required to use more than their sick leave and sickness teachers in the middle school and high school due to minor illnesses or to care for ill family members. Simultaneous model. How can we successfully manage and engage both groups of students? Morning, afternoon split model. Huge disruption to the district and staff's family, schedules, budgets, lack of collaboration, prep, and planning time. This exponentially increases the amount of teacher preparation. General hybrid model. Do we truly have enough subs to make this work for teachers who have been approved to do all remote? How long would we be doing the transitional hybrid model before we would have to switch to fully remote due to flu season? Finally, we as UEA leadership want to share some of our own concerns. 1, while we acknowledge and appreciate the fact that the surveys have been given, we do not feel that the timeline of their distribution and analysis has provided staff or families with the perception that their opinions were included in the decision making. 2, there was a clear lack of teacher representation in the planning and implementation process. Again, we will acknowledge that teacher input has now been gathered. However, based on the responses we received, teachers are not fully in support of either model. 3, knowing that either model truly represents an ideal model for staff and students, knowing that neither model truly represents an ideal model for staff and students, ignoring the concerns which have been shared to UEA and administrators alike, and presenting these options to the board does not give the perception of a truly collaborative process. 4, it has not gone unnoticed that we are using the terms transition and modified to describe this hybrid model. In our MOA, Memorandum of Understanding, we agreed to plans for remote only and hybrid models. To now refer to something as transitional or modified implies there is a third option. The hybrid plan negotiated with UEA in our Memorandum of Agreement is not the plan currently under consideration. Of course, we do want to Okay. I am almost done. Of course, we want to remain flexible and responsive in these uncertain times. However, this does complicate the interpretation of our contract for Q2. Our MOA does acknowledge that the parties may need to amend the MOA under certain circumstances, but this new plan has not been negotiated with UEA. If we were to negotiate this, UEA would ask what benchmarks are we using to determine policy shifts. Changes in our learning plan should be determined based on data. In conclusion, we are sharing all of this to illustrate that UEA is not in support of either the transitional or modified hybrid models. We want to underline the fact that we do not think they serve the best interest of staff or students, and we hope that the Central Office and Board of Education will collaborate further with all stakeholders, including UEA, to find other ways to meet the needs of our students who need additional support. UEA is prepared to problem solve and provide alternative ideas for engaging all students, families, especially those who have been identified as our most vulnerable and or academically at risk moving forward. Sincerely, UEA leadership. Thank you for your time.
So I just was looking at it to make sure I kept track of it. Okay. I will read a letter now in case we're waiting on someone else to come in public. This is from Lindsay Marshall. Dear Dr. Ivory Tatum and members of the Board of Education. My son is a first grader at Yankee Ridge Elementary, and I wanted to write to you ahead of the board's meeting on Tuesday to express my deep concern over the possibility of resuming in-person instruction, even on a limited basis, for the second quarter of the semester. I write with my concerns as a member of a high-risk family in the area, as the parent of a child currently in remote schooling, and also as a former classroom teacher. The public health issues facing a return, even on the hybrid basis, to in-person schooling have not substantially changed since the district decided to go fully remote for the first quarter. It is utterly baffling to me how there is any serious suggestion to return to in-person schooling when the testing for both CUPHD and UIUC indicate that community spread continues and students will be expected to attend in poorly ventilated schools where staff, teachers, and students will have inadequate PPE for protection. Especially as we enter colder months, the opportunities to school more safely outside will diminish, and teachers will be unable to open windows to improve airflow. We're asking teachers, students, and staff to walk into not just the same situation, which was deemed too dangerous for in-person schooling, even on a hybrid basis, but we are asking them to walk into worse conditions given the colder weather and impending flu season. That is unreasonable, and I'm frankly shocked to hear that the board is even considering it, much less citing the U of I numbers as justification when those numbers continue to be higher than projected even with the U of I's strict policies. Urbana schools will not be following any of these extraordinary measures and does not have the ability to identify and slow campus spread the way the university does. It is simply unsafe to resume in-person instruction. More than simply the public health concern, which should be sufficient to continue remote schooling with support for families who need additional support, such as the underused support at Urbana Middle School, I urge you to reconsider what you're asking of the teachers. I taught for 11 years and led my department for 5, and I understand the difficulty teachers face in being asked to transfer all of their instruction online. My child's teacher especially, and the entire Yankee Ridge first grade team have worked tirelessly to make online learning fun, engaging, and personal for their students. Students are settling into routines, connecting with each other and their teachers, and hitting a great rhythm as teachers continue to assess each student's learning needs and adjust to meet them. Our conference with our son's teacher on Friday was fantastic, and she shared with us the team's plans for even further differentiation and assessments for the next quarter. Having been in the classroom, I know how hard she and her team have worked, and experienced with supervising teachers in my department and with online education, I can tell from what I observe at home during the school hours that they are succeeding. Students are engaged, feel loved, and dive into activities with enthusiasm. This is due to the immense work these teachers have done, but more so the trust that they have built over the weeks of the first quarter. The thought that these teachers will be asked yet again to reinvent their curriculum to fit yet another unpredictable situation strikes me as an act of incredible bad faith on the part of the administration. I know that with my son's class, it will shatter what small community he and the other students have in a way that won't be built back under the in-person hybrid model the administration has proposed. We know that students cannot learn well under severe stress and that the emotional connection between teachers and students are the most powerful tools to help students learn in difficult situations. This move would put students in an impossible situation, and an entire quarter of relationship building and instructional design will be lost. In addition, I'm deeply concerned by the mandatory student survey teachers were told to take in class on Thursday. Observing my child's class showed me that the questions were so vague that they could not possibly provide meaningful student feedback and did not allow students to explain reasons for their answers. I'm concerned about why the survey was made mandatory and how this data will be used. As written, the survey cannot offer any accurate measure of student opinion concerning in-person or remote instruction, and I sincerely hope this flawed survey will not be part of the decision-making process about resuming in-person instruction. These are the concerns I have about schooling at large. My greatest personal concern is about one particular part of this proposal. We are a high-risk family, and my son won't be able to return to the classroom until it is truly safe, not just reopened under public pressure. This has been incredibly difficult for him, and he has connected so deeply with his wonderful teacher. When offered the choice of rewards for achievement in class, he always chooses remote lunch with the teacher. If he is forced out of her class because of our health conditions, it will be devastating to him. I know his education will suffer. She's connected with him and understood him in ways that others haven't, and he's thriving in her class, both reading and math above level. I ask you as a member of the community, an educator, and a mother not to disrupt the hard, good work these teachers and students have done under such extraordinary and demanding learning circumstances. Let us continue to keep each other safe and learn together. We can adjust to accommodate the needs of students for whom remote learning is presenting an undue burden without adopting an ill-advised plan for reopening that disrupts learning for all students and presents a danger to the health of students, their families, and their teachers and school staff. Please wait until it's truly safe and the best educational decision to move to a hybrid in-person model. It is not yet safe, and it is not the best educational decision at this time. Signed, Dr. Lindsay Marshall, a Chancellor's Postdoctoral Fellow at the U of I. Sorry, I had to rush that. Do we have any other in-person statements, Lori? Okay, I will proceed on with our letters. Next up from Jennifer Straub. Hello, members of USD 116 board. I'm writing this morning to express my concern regarding the plan to reopen elementary schools later this month. According to your own surveys, more than half of your staff are not comfortable returning to school in person. It is unacceptable to put them, their families, and our community at greater risk of infection while the local transmission rates have not significantly improved, and flu season is beginning. Students and teachers have been working diligently to establish routines and new tools for learning during this difficult time. Parents and caregivers have had to make huge adjustments to respond to these new needs. A return to in-person school would upend all the progress that has been made on this front, only to have routines changed yet again when outbreaks occur. While it is clear that just 32.9% of those families surveyed expressed a wish for school to begin in person, it is unclear whether a significant number of non-English surveys were collected from parents. I would hope that the board would postpone any decision on this matter until a more inclusive study can be made. Everyone would like to return to the robust in-person education offered in Urbana schools as soon as it is safe for our students, staff, and community. This pandemic has created unparalleled burdens for all families, but especially those most vulnerable. However, returning to in-person learning sooner than is safe will only prolong this horrible pandemic and do nothing to improve the long-term well-being of our community. Signed, Jen Straub, USD 116 parent. This is from Ming Kuo. Dear board members, I'm writing to urge you to vote against in-person instruction at this time. The reasons for moving to remote instruction have not changed. In fact, now that we know children are vectors for COVID-19, there are even stronger reasons to avoid in-person instruction than before. Thanks for your service, Ming Kuo, Urbana. From Angela Glaros. Greetings. I write both as a parent of a senior at UHS and as a professor at EIU, doing all of my classes remotely to protect myself and my students. Given the rapidly increasing numbers of cases in our state, as well as the political instability caused by the current regime that has allowed over 200,000 Americans to die and encourages its followers not to wear masks or take precautions, I urge you not to mandate in-person learning for District 116. Not only does it endanger students, but it endangers faculty and staff. Our teachers deserve better than this. Please listen to reason. I know I'm not alone in saying that I will categorically refuse to send my son back to in-person school. Sincerely, Dr. Angela Glaros. This one is from Robin and Ryan Fellers and Allison and James O'Dwyer. Members of the board, we are writing to ask you to please think very critically about the decision in front of you. Should Urbana students return to in-person learning? That is a truly difficult question to answer with many things to consider. However, despite all of us wanting to return to school buildings, we sadly must continue to answer not yet. First, we must consider safety as the novel coronavirus continues to spread in our community. We cannot ignore the dangers that COVID-19 presents. The district has not yet adequately addressed how the virus is spread through the air. The district is focused on deep cleaning, which we appreciate, but science and the CDC have agreed that contaminated surfaces are not the main mode of spread. Close contact and airborne transmissions are. These are the methods of spread that must be adequately addressed before we can safely return to school. The district has created a mask mandate, which is a great start. Thank you. But we have yet to see any details of how that policy would be enforced. Enforcement is imperative because my mask protects you, not vice versa. Therefore, we all must be held accountable. In addition, we have yet to see information from the district on any measures to mitigate airborne spread. Will there be an open window policy? What is the status of our ventilation systems? How many times can they replace the air in a given room in 1 hour? Do we have HEPA filters? Questions such as these must be addressed before it can be said that it is safe for our students and staff to return to in-person instruction. Until then, it is best to fully develop and invest in meaningful and research-based remote learning curricula to keep our USD families, community members, and children safer. Next, we must consider what level of risk our stakeholders are ready to accept. According to the data collected by the district as of October 5th, the majority of families and staff members feel uncomfortable returning to in-person instruction. Of particular note is how uncomfortable the staff is to return. If one looks closely at the data, they show that 45.1% are uncomfortable or very uncomfortable in comparison to the only 17.3% who responded that they were comfortable or very comfortable. How can we ask our teachers to return to the classroom when seeing those numbers? The district must get to the root of that discomfort and mitigate those issues. Until it is done so, we should not return to the in-person instruction. Forcing our teachers to accept a level of risk they are uncomfortable with is unacceptable. Finally, we acknowledge there are some situations that necessitate in-person instruction, such as certain disabilities, unsafe home environments, children of essential workers, etc. We feel deeply for families who are dealing with these circumstances. Perhaps students needing in-person instruction could be paired with teachers who have indicated they are very comfortable returning to the classroom. Perhaps the district could also address the above safety concerns as soon as possible to keep those students and teachers as safe as possible. And perhaps, if those issues are addressed with speed and rigor, we can all hope to return to in-person instruction before year's end. Sincerely, Robin and Ryan Fellers, parents of a Leal kindergartner, and Allison and James O'Dwyer, parents at Leal. This from Sam and Heather Payne. Make sure I got the right number of pages. Okay. Dear members of the board, for many students and families, returning to in-person instruction will undoubtedly have benefits that outweigh the potential health risks of returning to school during the pandemic. Many children are not learning well in what is clearly an unnatural learning environment. For many families, the burden, financial and otherwise, of not having a place for their children to go is immense. For many others who can afford to have their children at home and for whom remote learning has been successful, to what extent it can, the opposite is true. For them, returning to school is not worth the risk. As a community and as a school district, it's imperative that we do our best to take care of everyone, and the effort to address the needs of families coming from a wide spectrum of unique situations is commendable. As a parent and someone who cares about my community, I appreciate the idea that I can have the choice to do what's right for my family, while someone else will have the option to make a different choice that is right for their family. The district's plan, however, leaves teachers and staff with no choice but to return to buildings and risk infection. I understand that there are exceptions for teachers and staff that have medical documentation demonstrating that they're at higher risk, but while many things about this virus are not yet clear, research would seem to indicate that even younger people who are healthy may experience long-term damage to their bodies from contracting COVID-19. Even if they don't suffer any damage, they may likely spread the virus in the community and/or to loved ones who are at higher risk. Teachers, aides, support staff, custodians, and office staff in the public schools are the most valuable public servants that we have in our community. Our schools lack the resources and infrastructure to hold in-person instruction in a manner that is safe, according to our scientific understanding of how COVID-19 spreads in indoor spaces. A teacher will not be protected from infection in a poorly ventilated classroom with students, even spaced 6 feet apart, and especially when students remove their masks to eat breakfast, etc. To force teachers and staff into a situation that makes them feel unsafe, uncomfortable, unvalued, or unappreciated is not only dangerous and unethical, but could likely have long-term consequences for relationships. It's not the school district's fault that state and federal governments have not provided the resources, infrastructure, or guidance to provide a safe learning environment in our community. I can't imagine the weight of these decisions on the board or the administration. No matter what decision is made, it seems that some people will lose. But without teachers and staff who are happy, healthy, and safe in their working environment, everyone loses. Some teachers and staff feel comfortable returning and some do not. Please consider a plan that gives teachers and staff a choice in the matter. Thank you, Sam and Heather Payne. Okay, this is from Tracy Maxey and Jody Short. Dear board members and administrative team, after reviewing the two plans for in-person learning, we would like to strongly urge you to consider keeping all elementary students in remote learning for the second quarter. We feel there are many safety, logistical, and equity issues that still need to be addressed before any in-person learning should begin. With regards to safety, Region 6 is currently at a positivity rate of 7.5 and creeping towards 8.0, which is where restrictions would be put in place that would impact in-person learning. Since science has proven this virus to be airborne, we are concerned about the poor ventilation in our school buildings. The virus can live many hours and our systems would just recirculate the air in which the virus is living. The CDC has released information stating that the virus becomes quickly propagated throughout the air when people sing and exercise, both of which will be required by the students during PE and music, as those classes are live streamed into our rooms. Furthermore, these plans have students removing their masks to eat breakfast in the classroom, which again gives the virus an opportunity to enter the environment. Both of these situations cause great concern for the safety of teachers, students, and their families. We feel there are too many logistical variables that have not been addressed by either of these plans, and when we ask our building administrator, she has no answers to give us. For example, we've asked about arrival and dismissal procedures, and we were told all hands on deck. We're unclear what this means, what our responsibilities will be, and how any of this will be done keeping at least a 6-foot social distance. As teachers in the classroom, we will be required to keep a 6-foot distance from our students, making individual help impossible and small groups unrealistic. Our rooms were stripped of all unnecessary furniture and materials, so we're left wondering how to teach our students effectively in an environment such as this. We feel self-certification by 5 to 10-year-olds is ridiculous and irresponsible. More stringent procedures, such as temperature taking, rapid saliva tests, need to be used to ensure everyone's safety. We also question, what is the plan when a child arrives at school with COVID-like symptoms? Are they to be sent home immediately? What if no one can be reached to pick them up? Will testing be required before the student can return to school, and verified in what manner? In no way do these two plans create equity for staff or students. These plans require elementary classroom teachers to do 3 times as much work as our middle school and high school colleagues. In Plan A, all planning and collaboration time will be spent teaching. When does the preparation take place? When do we collaborate with our grade levels and colleagues to meet the needs of our students? In Plan B, again, elementary teachers are doing more work and being asked to divide their time and attention between in-person learners and those remotely joining our class. The in-person students will have access to materials the remote students won't. Learning time will be decreased due to breakfast and dismissal time. We've been told all support services will be via Zoom, so in-person students will still be spending much of their time on a device. We also realize there will be inequities in the number of students placed in each classroom. For example, a room at Wiley could have 7 students in the morning and 8 in the afternoon, while a classroom at Thomas Paine might have 15 and 15 per the parameters of these plans. We don't feel equitable instruction will be happening across the district to meet all of our students' needs. We have finally gotten our students and families into a nice routine with remote learning. They understand how to navigate our Google Classrooms and use the features of Zoom. We are seeing good progress from our students, and the vast majority of our parents stated a desire to remain remote for the second quarter during our conferences with them. Many of them feel it is unsafe to send students and staff back into the building with flu season right around the corner and COVID numbers rising. These plans are asking elementary teachers to make sweeping changes in their current teaching plans when we could go back to remote at any time due to an uptick in COVID numbers. And all of this for approximately 24 days of in-person learning given the current plan. We've also learned the University of Illinois feels it is unsafe and will not allow their student teachers into our buildings. Why would we send staff and students back under these conditions? Again, we're urging you to put everyone's health and safety first. Please vote no to plans A and B and yes to remote learning for the entire second quarter. We feel the message these plans send is that elementary classroom teachers and students are expendable. Everyone else can remain safe while we are being asked to risk our lives. This is not Urbana, better together. Respectfully, Tracy Maxey and Jody Short, 3rd grade teachers at Dr. Preston Williams. Okay. This one from Amy Wolf. Dear Board of Education, staff of Urbana School District 116, and Superintendent Ivory Tatum. I'm a parent of 2 kids who absolutely hate remote learning. I'm sure that, if asked by the district in a survey, they would gladly indicate their disdain for the learning format. After all, my 3rd grader has an executive functioning disability that can make his studies overwhelming in person as it is. Add in the online component and wow, you've got yourself quite a discombobulated kiddo. Then there's my kindergartner who has no idea what kindergarten looks like, but we can safely assume that a Zoom format is not what he had in mind. I know what our family signed up for. We signed up for the remote option no matter what. We signed up for the possibility that our children could be assigned different teachers for the second quarter should they remain online, in the worst case scenario. We signed up to commit to rigorous synchronous and asynchronous learning with the understanding that we'd need to give it our all. We did this disingenuously in retrospect. More realistically, we signed up for what we believe to be the less hazardous option for public health and, frankly, for our family. This is a luxury that we have that weighs heavily on my mind. As someone who grew up extremely poor in the home of a single mother who often was forced to leave me at home if latchkey was closed so she could go to work, I recognize that my ability to stay at home with my children while working full time is a privilege for which I am so very grateful. Having lived my childhood, not in a pandemic, mind you, I know, as does the district, that there are students who need to be in the care of a teacher every day for some period of time. I do not know all of the learning struggles that would necessitate a student be in person over remote learning, but I will speak on behalf of my son. Consider this the other half of the survey that he completed about whether or not he is learning in remote instruction. My understanding of what in-person instruction will look like is as follows. Note that my kindergartner will remain at home. My third grader will arrive to school in order to eat breakfast unmasked with his fellow classmates at a distance, but not necessarily far enough of a distance to prevent infection. When that's over, he will likely need to wash and disinfect his own eating surface. After breakfast is over, instruction will begin. Within 30 minutes, he'll probably need to use the bathroom, but wait, will he be able to? How will that process work? So either he will be able to use the bathroom or he won't. Either way, we're in the instruction part. He's either missed some of what the teacher has already said because he went to use the bathroom, or he's missed some of what the teacher has already said because he has a working memory disability. Either way, my child will not be able to get any one-on-one assistance from the teacher because the teacher, who may or may not already know of my son's learning challenges, won't physically be able to get close to my son to see why he is struggling in his assignment. This is probably all within the first 30 minutes of instruction, but we'll continue on for the majority of that in-person session. Fast forward to the end of the in-person learning session and my child is emotionally depleted, anxious, and now, much like his teacher, managing two different ways of learning the same curriculum. It's important that he not forget his coping strategies for remote learning because he's likely going to return to remote learning at some point as we get closer to winter. With these assumptions about what my son's experience will be like, why would I send him back to in-person learning unless I absolutely need to? I wouldn't, I won't, and that is a privilege. Now let's imagine that all of those learning challenges remain the case, but I don't have the option to work from home. This in-person experience is miserable, but at least my child is safe. In this scenario, the most urgent need of childcare is addressed. It makes me wonder how many demographics will this return be appropriate for? Is it necessary that the student body be surveyed with some false hope that they may be able to return to school, the school they know, not the not the school that will actually be provided to them? Or might certain populations be invited to return if it is clear that there is a clear benefit and or need for them to do so? I would love if the district could demonstrate what real need looks like during the time of a pandemic. I really can only make assumptions about what an in-person experience would look like. If, for example, there was a plan to do outdoor learning or even outdoor breakfast, I might be more amenable, but that hasn't been addressed in any documentable way of which I'm aware. If I knew specifically what that instruction would look like for a child whose learning disabilities, I'd be more amenable. If I knew the teachers supported this, if I knew whether or not my child's teacher would be with him in person or if they'd remain remote, I'd be more amenable. If the survey data currently posted reflected survey results of our Spanish-speaking populations, I'd be more amenable. I suspect many of us are not confident in our decision making between remote and in person because we're missing key information to help us make informed choices. I believe that the district has the best of intentions as it tries to fit a square peg into a round hole, but it's also clear that the district is still moving forward with the same square peg round hole mentality, and that for me has led to a current distrust of the district. At this point, I only hope that I will be able to rebuild that trust in the district, the same trust I have had previously in the district and the same trust that I currently have in my children's teachers. I also want to add that I don't believe this is simply the fault of the district. Every day we should remember that the district teachers and families are being forced to take on the burden of a system that has failed all of those stakeholders, whether there's a pandemic or not. So very sincerely, Amy Wolf, Urbana School District 116 parent. Okay, from Laura Orr. Hello, members of UXD 116 board. I'm writing to express my deep concern regarding your plan to reopen elementary schools for the second quarter. What again seems to be a half-hearted attempt to seek support for your agenda, you, the school board and administration, crafted a misleading survey that our family felt the questions to be leading and biased toward an in-person return, and even still garnered more support to remain remote than in person. This survey completely missed the opportunity to really lay the groundwork for a plan moving forward or ask about potential needed support systems for students and families, and instead created a false narrative about students returning as if the pandemic has magically disappeared. It was also highly concerning to have teachers ask our young learners if they missed school and wanted to return on a live Zoom in front of their peers with inadequate information to make such a decision, which should render this data useless. Yet we are clear that the board seeks to use this information gathered from 5-year-olds to make their decision. No attempt was made to give a full picture of what returning to school would actually look like for these young learners. Of course, many students want to be with their peers, play on the playground, eat lunch together, etc., but none of that would be the scenario in which they would enter based on your plan. We could instead be voting on a robust, rigorous online curriculum that better supports students and staff safely. Why was all summer planning coordinated by the district solely on plans for in-person return instead of creating meaningful supports for our teachers and students in a remote environment? Once again, I see this board making big decisions in a silo without addressing real needs of our students and district families, like high-speed internet, tech support that is easy to acquire on a regular basis, reliable translations, or childcare needs. I see again a misuse in using data easily accessible from the Champaign Public Health District or the CDC to help make this decision to return to an in-person plan. How did the district arbitrarily pick below a 5% active caseload when 5% is high for our area? It's highly concerning and disingenuous to consider a return when the numbers now for COVID cases are no better than when the district decided to go fully remote in August. What this leads me to believe is the board seems to be more worried about optics than safety. Yes, student attrition is massively important. Each kid lost to homeschool and private school is important dollars lost for the district, but this board must see that these numbers pale in comparison to students lost in the wind. We don't want to hear about protecting our district from families with privilege leaving. We want to hear more about how the district will support the early 200 students that are not engaging. Students, families, guardians, teachers, and staff have been asked to course correct time and time again based on the reactionary decisions this board has made. So, just when many students have started to develop trusting relationships with teachers and feel whatever sense of routine with remote learning that is possible, you, the board, feel it's time to upend this process. Ignoring a blatant risk to safety, you are imposing more trauma on these young learners. Families are struggling, but from what I see every day in my son's class, grandmothers, parents, siblings, and community members are doing all they can to make the best of what they have to make their kids' school experience successful. It's far from what we all imagined this year of school would look like, but it is the community experience and the best way to keep the majority safe and not willingly risk a surge in cases in our district. There is no number of students that is acceptable to risk getting sick because you feel an urge to return to normal when normal left the building a long time ago. So I asked the board to reject an in-person model and continue remote learning through the second quarter and not realistically put a full school hybrid plan on the table until there has been a dramatic shift in COVID cases and the threat for students, teachers, and staff safety is gone. Regards, Laura Orr, District 3. Excuse me. Okay. This one is from Dan Bechtel. I'd like to start by saying that as a teacher in this district, I really appreciate the opportunity here to have my voice heard when it comes to the decision-making process in the district. If through this process the district as a whole decides that it is the right decision to go back to schools, I will of course do so. But the great thing about this district is that we weigh the voices of all stakeholders when we make these decisions, and I am proud to be part of that. That being said, my concern with respect to the decision to send the elementary students and teachers back to school has nothing to do with voice, rather with data. As of yet, no clear metric has been shared with parents, students, and staff about what community numbers will deem it safe for us as a whole to come back to school in person. Without that metric, we are making a decision that impacts the health and safety of a large part of our district population based solely upon feelings and voices rather than hard science and facts. With that metric in place, agreed upon by all stakeholders, any other part of this conversation becomes a moot point. If we hit the metric, we go back in person as a whole district. If we don't, we don't. There is no doubt as to the unmet needs of a large group of students at the elementary level, and we cannot continue doing what we're doing without making changes to address those unmet needs. Figuring out how to do that and deciding whether we come back to in-person learning are, in my mind, two different issues if we have this clear metric in place. If we meet the metric, we target those students in particular and figure out the best way to get them back into the schools and bring them back on track. If we meet that metric, then all 3 levels of school will go back in person, and we will have to target our students in need at all levels with that same goal in mind. If we don't meet the metric, we have to target those students in a different way that functions under the parameters of the system of remote teaching that we have put in place. No matter what, it is our job as a district to meet the needs of all of our students, and if a large portion of those students are not getting the support they need, we have to figure out the best way to help them. Whether we have to figure out how to best do that under a remote model or an in-person model must be a decision based upon fact and science and not feelings if we are to meet their health and safety needs as well as their educational needs. My fear is also that without a metric like this in place, the very real needs of a group of people in our community will be used as a political lever to push us all back into schools before it is seemingly safe to do so, and that is unethical, unconscionable, and unfair to that group of people. My request is that we work together to solve both issues, finding a fair metric for return and finding a way to meet the needs of our neediest students under both models of instruction. That way, no matter where we are teaching and learning, we are not leaving anyone's needs unmet. Thank you for your consideration and thank you for letting me voice my thoughts and concerns on this matter. District 116 is a great place to teach and learn, and I'm proud to be a part of it. Sincerely, Dan Bechtel, math teacher at Urbana High School. This one has a very long list of signatories. The back page is as full as the front page, so I don't know if I should read every single person who signed. I'll try. To Urbana School District Elementary educators. We're worried for your safety and the well-being of your students as the district considers returning to some in-person instruction. It is unsettling to recognize that our school board is continuing to meet remotely while considering bringing you and your students back in person. We're worried that your most at-risk students will not have a truly improved educational experience, but rather a worse experience that may affect them physically and mentally through unnecessary exposure during dangerous times. We're worried that your most at-risk students are also representative of the racial groups we are trying to serve equitably. We're worried that you're being expected to do more work than possible by becoming both full-time virtual teachers and full-time hybrid teachers. We acknowledge that this 100% remote learning situation is not ideal for student learning and is more difficult for some students than others. But the blend of remote and hybrid seems to be even less ideal when it comes to quality of instruction. We are worried about your physical and mental health. We're worried about your families. How can you be a good employee, parent, and/or cohabitant while being regularly exposed to public contact? We're worried about providing support to students from 6 feet away and behind masks and barriers, supports for speech development, handwriting, manipulative use, social emotional learning, the very things that students who are labeled at risk often need to make progress. These supports and interventions cannot be implemented with fidelity in our transitional hybrid model, so why are we targeting this population at this time? We are worried about bathroom logistics and breakfast times when students will be eating without a mask and it's too cold to open the windows. We're worried about IEPs, 504s, and ELL supports, spaces, students, and educators being overly exerted. We're worried about the lack of available rapid testing options for you and your students. We're worried about the low numbers of students using the community learning labs and the lack of transparency and follow-up contact tracing with the students and staff who are. We support you and care about you and our students. Thank you for your energy, intuition, and collaboration as we navigate education better together. Sincerely, and I'm going to read these Urbana School District secondary educators. Sarah Jones, Kim Summers, Amanda Perez Rosser, Matthew Murray, Mariella Agual, Brianna Morton, Alicia Trezise, William Villaflor, Megan Friend, Louis Bushline, Julie Erlinger, Dawn Navejas, Cheryl Coranda, Sania Zafar, Zachary Booth, Christy Fernsberg, Carolyn Layton, Jenna Finch, Christina Leon, Melissa McMahon, Hector Lugo, Hillary Allen, Katrina Reber, Karen Schreiber, Phil Weber, Lisa Quinn, Natalie Otis, Amanda Gentner, Ashley Dodson, Elizabeth Nieto, Dania Cantorell, Kevin Erlinger, Tracy Welch, Letitia Bullock, Karen Shelton, Elizabeth Orr, Julia Lowry, Jill Lagerstam, Felicia Tufano, Rodrigo Schofield, Philip Wright, Jessica Shad, Ava Martone, Ellen Baxter, Katie Equijuner, Alyssa Antonakos, Levi Molinauer, Aaron Anderson, Tina Jambardino, Laura Lenka, Megan Stenzel, Lori Trent, Kelsey Angel, Elizabeth Smith, Caitlin Rexroad, Keishla Rivera, Zach Bell, Holly Spencer, Karen Decker, Matt Swiger, Tracy Luchik, Bonnie Thiel, Laura Koritz, Laura Lindeman, Jamie Henkelman, Dan Doing, Taryn Smith, Nathan Westerman, Julie Paquette, Tammy Bima, Susie Wright, Michael Mitchener, Beth Hansen, Megan Ruthavalian, sorry, I mispronounced that. Maura Williams Zambrano, Mark Harrison, Lawrence Reed, Tucker Novell, Adam Harris, Benjamin Unander, Bobby Boykin, Paula Rebitz, Kaylin Sims, Sydney Bauman, Blaise Pascal Zamena, Olivia Grillo, Dennis Miggett, Kathy Hayes, Daria Afanasov, Jamie Perry, Jeff Davis, Libby Spanagel, Becky Park, Rachel Sassine, Doug Brown, Rachel Mueller, Shanda Goodrum, Linda Murphy, Irving Rodriguez, Lori Ellinger, Roberta Westerman, Kiera Pasai, Scott McBride, and Tammy Bime has been listed twice. I apologize if I mispronounced your names. Thank you for your letter. From Elizabeth Klutz. Members of the school board, I am the mother of 3 Urbana elementary students, and I'm writing to plead for a return to in-person instruction. I'm thankful our school district moved swiftly to protect our students and staff earlier this year. The pause in in-person instruction no doubt flattened the local curve and saved lives. I am in awe of the responsiveness and ingenuity of our amazing teachers, adapting so wonderfully to these unprecedented circumstances. However, a significant portion of our students are suffering due to this teaching model. My youngest daughter, Leah, is one of those students. Leah spent 2 years as a student at Urbana Early Childhood Center. She is 5 years old and has Rett syndrome, which has robbed her of verbal speech and impairs her ability to run and play like a typical 5-year-old. Leah thrived at UECS, and her joy in being there was evident. Every day when I would pick her up, she would try to walk back to her classroom instead of getting in our car. Leah may not speak with words, but everyone who worked with her at early childhood could see how much she enjoyed school. We were excited for Leah to go to full day kindergarten. She would finally get what she wanted, to be in school longer each day. COVID-19 changed those plans. Leah no longer likes school. The girl who refused to come home from school now is depressed and uninterested in her school time. Class Zoom sessions are overwhelming for her, and she cannot engage with her teacher. The girl who smiled and laughed with her teacher at early childhood now uses her communication device to beg for an end for Zoom time. Stop, finished. Stop, finished, she says with her communication device. It breaks my heart. Leah is also missing out of the vital therapies provided by our fantastic district therapists. They've worked tirelessly to help their students and should be recognized more than they are for a job well done. However, a well-intentioned parent is no substitute for trained professionals. Leah's walking abilities have declined, her sensory needs have skyrocketed, and her social and emotional well-being is clearly affected. There are many students like Leah in our district, and they are suffering. My family is juggling the needs of 3 elementary students who are in synchronous learning at the same time. One of these children requires a one-to-one aid at all times for her safety and to facilitate her learning. This current model is unsustainable for us as a family and for our student body as a whole. I implore the district to move forward with providing an option to return to modified in-person learning for our most vulnerable students. I appreciate that there is risk involved in returning to the classroom, but viruses do not spontaneously disappear. We must find ways to safely move forward with meeting the needs of our children and on with life. Respectfully, Elizabeth Klutz. From Carla Vincent Westfield. Dear Dr. Ivory Tatum and members of the board, please do not reopen the elementary schools at this time. It still isn't safe for students, staff, families, or the community, especially with the proposed plans that put 12 to 15 or more students in each classroom. There is not enough room to truly keep everyone at least 6 feet apart. It is also not sensible or necessary to upset all of the remote learning routines that the students, families, and staff already have in place. We realize that some students are not as engaged as anyone would like, but instead of changing everyone's schedule, why not focus on the students who are struggling with attendance? Under normal circumstances, attendance problems are handled individually. We don't change every student's schedule when just a few have attendance issues. The same process should apply to remote learning. It makes sense to work closely with unengaged elementary students and their families to get those students to the learning labs every day. If transportation is an issue, maybe the district can provide buses for those students. The learning labs are in gyms or other large spaces where students can truly be 6 feet or more apart, keeping everyone as safe as possible. We all want to get back to normalcy, but at this time, it's just not safe for so many students and staff to be any of our schools. Please focus efforts for unengaged elementary students to attend the learning labs, which is the same focus for the middle school and high school students at this time. Thank you for your hard work and consideration. Carla Vincent Westfield, King School. This is from Maggie Byrne. To the board, I'm writing to express my concerns about both of the transitional hybrid return to school plans. As it had been presented, the plan is highly inequitable to both students and elementary teachers. It is especially problematic for dual language classes. Either of the two plans puts a huge inequitable stress on elementary teachers. The non-simultaneous model requires teachers at the elementary level to do more than double the work with less time allotted in the contractual day for planning and preparation and family contact. Not only will we be required to teach twice as many hours per day in a room that has not been cleaned yet after students were in it, but we will also, if we do our jobs well, need to adapt and create two sets of asynchronous assignments that meet the different needs of kids who learned in person versus online. We will no longer have the time we previously used to call parents whose students were not engaging, nor will we be able to host office hours or answer the 20 plus questions from students many of us field usually during the afternoon of asynchronous work. This will mean that students will get less support. In the simultaneous plan, teachers maintain that afternoon check and connect time, but the actual reality of teaching that way will mean that the virtual only kids, most of whom in my class would not have chosen that option, but be doing it anyway, will not get the same quality of instruction. The reality is that in a classroom, even if we had the proper tools to project the virtual class, record ourselves, and still have a whiteboard on which to teach, which most of us do not, if the in-person kids are talking, or goodness forbid, even misbehaving, the kids in virtual will have an incredible amount of competing noise, and the teacher's attention will be so split that engagement will drop. This is also really problematic for dual language students who need to have a clear line of sight with their teachers and a view of their full faces and mouths to ensure best understanding when learning in a different language. It is incredibly hard to understand your second language through a mask or when the masked teacher on the video steps to the side to help a student off camera. My students rely on facial cues, gestures, and the multitude of props I use in my teaching to make meaning of both languages. Frankly, there's not enough physical space in my class to accommodate 12, let alone 15 students 6 feet apart. It is a mathematical impossibility even before you consider the need to get up to wash hands and use the bathroom. I cannot even conceptualize a safe way to get 90 plus kids who will be sharing one set of bathrooms in my hallway to use the bathroom even once, let alone more if they need it. This will lead to even more instructional time being lost. And there is no plan for how teachers would even be able to use the bathroom, a basic bodily function, since no one else can come into our bubbles. I strongly urge the board to consider a third option that includes expanded learning labs and allowing the use of breakout rooms and volunteers with parental consent. Before we put kids and staff at risk, we need to ask if this would really even lead to better outcomes for students. As a professional doing this work, I do not believe it will. Signed, Maggie Byrne, dual language teacher and Urbana resident. From Tom Schroeder, board and community members. In the discussion of returning to in-person learning, I frequently heard the University of Illinois mentioned. I believe this is an important part of the discussion for two reasons. One, the presence of the university student population is one of the largest potential risk factors to our community. Two, the university provides a local model for returning to in-person learning. The potential risk related to the university student population is important to consider when comparing Urbana to other school districts. We should be very hesitant to compare our district and plans to towns that don't have a large university student population. Parents are willing to accept more aggressive plans in communities where potential risk is significantly lower. In many ways, the in-person learning plan that U of I implemented has been excellent and can be used as a model for our district plan. Positive test results are rapidly identified and affected persons are quarantined. Contact tracing is automated. Daily test positivity rates have remained low or been quickly brought under control. Community spread has remained relatively low. Some aspects of the U of I plan will be difficult or impossible to replicate in a district plan. The cost associated with rapid spit testing will force us to rely on symptoms to identify probable cases, and identification will be delayed until symptoms appear or missed completely if they don't. Unlike the vast majority of the U of I student population, our district student population will be going back and forth between the school environment and family homes on a daily basis. Compared to the U of I would expect the rate of spread to be faster and community spread to be higher. The headline metric case positivity rate used by U of I has hidden the biggest highlight of the U of I results. Since the beginning of the Urbana school year, the cumulative infection rate for the on-campus U of I student population is around 5%. Given typical university student environments and behavior, 1 out of 20 UIUC students becoming infected is an impressively low total. With the U of I plan as a model and the full expectation that our results will be worse, we need to decide if the risk to the health and lives of our student, family, community, and staff is worth the possible benefits of a mandated return to in-person learning. Signed, Tom Schroeder, parent of 3 district students. Don't know if this, okay. This is from the Dr. Preston Williams Elementary UEA members. The majority of UEA members at Dr. Preston Williams Elementary are abstaining from voting on either option presented by the Urbana School District Administration. Members feel that the options presented were not created in collaboration with teachers, support staff, or parents, and do not put the safety of our staff and students first. In addition, these options do not present research shared with stakeholders. Furthermore, these options were shared after a general survey was taken of both staff and family, preventing both groups from making an informed decision. We are being asked to vote when questions surrounding safety have been unanswered. We propose a third option, staying remote until the end of the first semester and until rapid testing is available. Members want to be back into the classroom. However, our priority is to do it in a manner conducive to more strict safety guidelines. By extending the current remote learning status, we will have the opportunity to collaborate more effectively to prepare for in-person instruction with all stakeholders involved in the decision-making and in consideration of any and all challenges that could impact student learning. Okay. Sorry, folks, I'm trying to get organized here. Okay. This from Alice Grimmelsman. Given the favorable evidence regarding rapid testing combined with contact tracing, I would ask the board to ensure that rapid testing, such as the University of Illinois Shield testing, be made available to students and staff prior to reopening for in-person instruction. Signed, Alice Grimmelsman, speech language pathologist, Urbana Early Childhood School, and Dr. Williams Elementary. This is signed from several teachers. Dear Dr. Irie Tatum and USD 116 School Board. Last Friday, we were presented with 2 options for returning to in-person learning with our students. The presentation was titled Return to Learn. We were saddened by the title of this presentation. It implies that we must return to in-person teaching in order to ensure that our students learn. However, all of us have been working diligently to ensure that our students learn. In fact, there's quite a bit of learning that has been happening in these first 6 weeks of school in the virtual format. So we know that we do not need to return to learn. It may not have been the intent to be dismissive to all the work that we've been doing, but it felt that way. These hybrid plans were not conceived in good faith with input from parents and teachers. These plans were presented to teachers in the Remote Learning Committee after construction of the plans. Parents were surveyed after the construction of these 2 options, so their voice was not included. The surveys they completed are flawed because they compared our current virtual teaching to an in-person teaching that students and parents remember prior to the pandemic. When we go back to in-person teaching, it will look nothing like the in-person teaching that we conducted prior to the pandemic. There are many, many issues with both plans. On Friday, October 2nd, Jennifer Ivory Tatum presented the 2 plans to the elementary school teachers only. Teachers were asked to submit questions, and as of today, none of those questions have been answered. There isn't equity in making only elementary school teachers go back into the classroom to in-person teaching. We've heard that central office is going to require middle school and high school teachers to work from their classroom buildings to try to be more equitable. This just puts those teachers at more risk for contracting the virus and does nothing to mitigate the increased exposure elementary school teachers will face. We need to stay remote. This virus is not under control. There is no cure for this virus. There's no vaccine for this virus. Putting people together in a room without proper ventilation, as is the case in our classrooms, is putting those people in harm's way and an increased risk for contracting the virus. All of this knowing that there is a risk of death for people who contract the virus. Please keep our students and staff safe and continue remote learning. Sincerely, Valerie Willits, Sue Foreman, Jessica Chong, and Jill Quisenberry. This one, let me see, from Carol Lichtensteiger. We should not select either of the two in-person options currently being considered for next quarter. Instead, we should expand in-school options for the subset of students that have not been able to make remote learning work for them. First, the learning labs should be expanded. For those that need more than the learning labs, groups of 3 to 5 students could meet in their classroom with teaching assistants, building subs, and special ed teachers in conjunction with their classroom teacher on Zoom. These students would predominantly, but not exclusively, be those with IEPs. Reasons for my recommendations. 1. The community spread of the coronavirus is not significantly different than it was in August when remote learning was chosen. Coronavirus infection carries the risks of painful illness and death. Even when spared clinical illness, harm can be done by transmitting the virus to others, including those most vulnerable to severe disease and death. The subset of long haulers, those with chronic debilitating symptoms, is increasing, and even those that initially had a mild case can still suffer or be debilitated weeks or months later. 2. Mid-semester switching to in-person learning is too disruptive to the students' routine and learning. After the switch, many groups, if not the whole district, will have to return to remote learning while quarantining at different points in the semester. The students will do better with a stable, dependable schedule and routines. They do not need the uncertainty each day of an abrupt notice to switch back. 3. Each of the hybrid models being considered has drawbacks. The teaching time in the first option, with in-person in the morning and remote learning in the afternoon, is teacher time intensive. If the teachers do not get burned out, the students would benefit because teaching the students in small groups, half of the class at a time, will likely enhance learning for all and provide more focused help for those who need it. My concern with the second option is the difficulty of simultaneously connecting and engaging with both groups of students in person and in Zoom, and with teacher and students efficiently hearing and seeing input from the other group. 4. Almost all coronavirus outbreaks occur indoors. Just this week, the CDC acknowledged that infectious virus can and does spread farther than 6 feet indoors. This acknowledgement was delayed by politics affecting both the WHO and the CDC. Scientists have been presenting data and concern of the distant spread indoors since early summer. ISBE's ventilation guidance, on which our August plan is based, was drafted before this method of spread was acknowledged. We need to restrict classrooms to a few students to avoid overloading the room's ventilation until we can meet the airborne spread mitigation recommendations of the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers. They recommend 3 air changes per hour, 3 to 5 times what a typical building has, and the filters should have a MERV of 13 or greater, not the more typical rating of 7 or 8 MERV, minimum efficiency reporting value. Adequacy of ventilation can be monitored with people in the room, as the CO2 level should be 800 ppm or less. Most buildings are designed to let the CO2 rise to 1200 ppm. HEPA filter room purifiers are effective if sized right and maintained. Our August plan said to open windows, but that's limited in scope and time. The plan also indicated that for classrooms without windows to open, room purifiers would be added. I do not know if this is in progress, but I do know it is not completed. Safety first. Other schools are doing the experiment with in-person learning. Classes and schools have had to switch to remote learning because of viral infections. Unfortunately, due to privacy concerns, public health staff will not release data on what has worked and what has led to outbreaks in schools. Note, we cannot stop the virus from coming into our schools. Our goal is to prevent the spread of the virus in the school setting. We have a great county public health department, which has worked tirelessly providing guidance to make sure schools stay as safe as possible. The fact remains, when asked, would she send a child of hers to in-person classes? The director of public health could not answer yes. Thanks for considering my concerns. Carol Lichtensteiger, substitute teacher and foster parent. Lastly, from Daniel Chenoweth. Dear Superintendent Dr. Avery Tatum and school board members, my name is Danielle Chenoweth and I live at 412 West Illinois Street. I serve as township supervisor, the chair of the Public Health District Board, and I have a child in the dual language program at Leal. It was not easy to go fully remote, but we did it. I applaud the kids, teachers, and administration for hearing our concerns and making it happen. It took a whole village. My son loves being back at school. He knows every kid in his class. His teacher opens every class with song. They share stories about hopes and fears. One child shares she lost her grandmother to COVID. I listen in as the teacher helps 24 9-year-olds hold space for her loss. They learn math. The teacher calls on the quiet ones. They all get up and dance with Ms. Kinnaman. It took us 2 to 3 weeks to adjust to the schedule, get access to all the portals. No, Clever does not make it automatic, and get homework in every day on time. My son feels the stress and every night struggles to sleep saying, I just have a lot on my mind, Mom. I'm grateful we can be at home together because the number of COVID cases in our community has tripled since school first started. My dear friend and his family all got COVID. I see firsthand the consequences. Weeks later, and he is having neurological and heart issues. This is not the normal flu. This could be years of recovery for those who get it. Now that we finally have a school rhythm, we're being told this could all change. If I choose not to send my child to in-person school, he could be ripped from his classroom, the kids he knows, a teacher he trusts, and flung into a new environment. Kids and teachers are not pawns on a game board. A classroom is a community. I have an immune compromised housemate and my mother will stay with us for Thanksgiving. I feel being asked to make an impossible choice between my son and these two I love. Your own survey shows 2/3 of teachers are frightened to return, as are the majority of parents. We're about to go into flu season and more close quarters with the cold. Transmissions rates are finally down on campus, but up in the community. Please, please, please leave things as they are for students and parents who want to stay home and stay intact with their classes. If there is an in-person component, let it be a choice. We are not out of the woods with COVID-19. It is not safe to go back until transmission rates are under control or we have a vaccine. Thank you for your consideration. Danielle Chenoweth. Okay, that concludes the public comment portion of our meeting. I'm just going to take a quick second here. Okay, thank you. There is a call tonight for an executive session after the current meeting for the purpose of the purchase of lease or of real property, purchase or lease of real property for the use of the district, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired. That will take place at tonight's public session. Okay, next we need an approval for tonight's agenda then, please.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I need a roll call, please.
Member Carter,
Yes.
member Demmett,
Yes.
member Patton,
Yes.
member Pulaski.
Yes.
Member Fisher votes yes. Vice President Exum
Yes.
and President Hall.
Yes, motion passes. The agenda is approved. Okay, we're going to move straight into administrative reports. And our first one up is from Kimberly Norton, who is going to give us the 6-day enrollment continued discussion from our last meeting. Take it away.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to give an update from our enrollment last time to where we stand presently. And our current enrollment is 3,864, and we're still down about 335. Since I reported September 1st, we have increased by 34 students. Also, last time I shared that we had a significant number of our students that were unknown, that we didn't know where they had transferred schools, if it was within the county or outside of. And so we made a lot of improvement in that area. Previously, we had 160 students that we didn't know their location at that time, which county they went to, and now that has decreased to 91 students. And that's comparable to where we were at the beginning of the year last year. Also to note, parochial, a year ago at this time, we had about 16 students that were in a parochial school. At the beginning of the year, it was 45, and that has now increased to 48. Last year, as I stated, we were at 96 for unknown, and then at the beginning of the year was 160, and now that's at 91. And at the beginning of last year, we had 19 students that were being homeschooled, and then we started the year off at 50, and we're currently at 69. So I just wanted to share an update on our enrollment. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions?
I do. Kim, are we going to have any demographic information on the number of students that have left in terms of low SES or racial? Kim, you're muted if you're trying to answer.
This particular report didn't break it down by demographics, but we can definitely, I can provide that information.
Okay, I think that would be important for us to know as it might materialize and be important with the discussion we're going to have later tonight.
We will have some other information that we can break down by demographics as far as that Dr. Ivory Tatum will share as far as students that are being chronically absent, but I can pull this information that way for you.
I'm really concerned about the kids that are not engaged in education right now.
Yes, I understand. So are we.
Any other questions about the 6-day enrollment? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. That was our one administrative report. We have no policy review for tonight, so then we move on to action items. The first being the Urbana Park District's intergovernmental agreement with the school district. I don't know. Did you want to say something about that? Go ahead. Okay.
So this is the, and I'm far away from Kim, so I'm pulling my mask down so I can talk. And I'm far away enough from Ann. So this intergovernmental agreement was written in collaboration with our district attorneys and the Park District Attorney. We've been working on this since August, actually, and it was finally approved by the Park Board during their September meeting, and it's our first chance that we can bring it back for our board to look at. This was the agreement when we were beginning our full hybrid, when we were looking at using the Park District sites as off-campus learning sites at Anita Purvis, Phillips Recreation Center, and Brookins. So the Tim Bartlett and I and the superintendent of parks, Corky, we feel like it made sense to just move forward and have the agreement signed and have it ready to go. So in the event we were ready to enact our full hybrid and needed to utilize those spaces, we would already have the agreement taken care of. So if you walk through here, it's a pretty standard agreement. It covered, the fact that we're not going to be charged any fees. Again, the original times and days in here were related specifically to our hybrid plan. It talks about how we would be dividing the students up, what spaces we would be using, how we would enter the building, the cleaning protocols that we follow, which would be the same protocols we would be following at the district, how we would be sharing those spaces as the Park District might have activities going on. So we've included some maps that indicate public use space, how the USD 116 students would enter the building, how we exit the building. We walked through all of these spaces and designated where our students would be, the rooms they would be in, how they would be picked up, dropped off. We tried to think of basically every detail that we could related to safety and just the same considerations that we put in our phase 4 back to school plan. You will see them here. So temperature checks, self-certifications, all of that information. So again, we're just trying to be ahead of the game and have these approved and signed so we can move forward when and if we need to use them.
So I have the only question I have, it relates to the gym at Brookins. They've got us down for 3/4 of the space and 1/4 of it being shared. How will that be delineated?
So at the time when we thought we might be using the space, John, the 1/4 of the space that we didn't have access to was going to be used by the county clerk for voting. Right, they were using it for census, for people to come in for the census, and then it was going to switch. So right now they're using it for voting. So we were going to work with I can't remember his name, at Lincoln Square Mall, where the Health Alliance, Jim Webster, to get some partitions, the big partitions, and we were going to kind of partition off the space that the public would come in and use for voting. By the time we would be utilizing these spaces, probably voting will be over and we'll be able to have access to the whole gym. But that was the original plan, as you see it here, is we would not use that 1/4 of the gym, and the public would access a specific door, come in, vote, and then go back out, where they would have no contact with the students.
Okay, it's a weird quarter in that our entrance, 116 entrance is the northwest.
So we were going to use the southwest entrance where there's a couple park district offices there, so parents would park in the parking lot. And then our temperature screening and symptom screening section would be.
That's actually the northeast entrance.
Northeast, I'm sorry, you're right. Actually northwest. The east is where we were going to have the public come in off of that long hallway.
Yeah, it didn't coordinate with the if you look
with the map.
It didn't coordinate. We've got us coming into the shared corner and the public coming into the exclusive corner.
Okay, I'll have to work with Corky to fix that then. But the idea would be we were going to use the northwest, and the public would use the northeast entrance. And then the partitions would, our students would go down the hallway and into that back part of the gym where the stage is, and the voting and in anything that the county would be using would be partitioned away from us. So
yeah, I don't have a problem with the agreement, only with that particular
the map. Okay.
And the security that would be involved in traipsing us past the common area before we get to our own area.
Well, the students wouldn't actually be going in the common area. They were going to go from outside into that entrance. And then there's a long hallway there where you can enter the gym on the south end.
Yes, goes to the GIS offices.
Yes.
Other questions?
Can I just add, this is Peggy. I appreciate the hard work on this and the generosity of the Park District. It sounds like even though we have particular hours stipulated in the agreement that was based on an old plan, it sounds like there's enough flexibility that we can use these spaces on any days and times that we might need. I mean, they're that open to kind of this semester, maybe one use, maybe next semester, another use. I mean, they're that flexible.
Sure. And yeah, good point, Peggy. So this is aligned again with the hybrid, which was from 8 to 1, but I did talk to Tim, about the, if we were going to, if we needed to use them as learning lab spaces and they were amenable to that. Had the learning labs been kind of overrun and really full, we talked about using those spaces as learning labs, which would change the times because they wouldn't be, it would just depend on what synchronous block we were going to use it for. So most of these sites were all staffed until about 4, which would have allowed us to use any of them for any of our synchronous blocks because the middle school ends at 3:30.
Wonderful.
So that's been an open possibility. We haven't taken the park district up on that yet, but it was something that they said that they were willing to, a lot of their spaces are just sitting empty. So they were wanting to have, they were willing to be a good partner and have kids in those spaces if we needed them. We haven't had a need for them yet.
Great. Thank you.
Other questions or concerns?
I just had a question about transportation. Did you already say that, would that be up to the parents' responsibility? Okay.
Yeah, at the time, we assumed our buses would be busy transporting students, and so yes, this would be a responsibility of the parent for pickup and drop off. Every entrance that we've outlined easily allowed for a car line, like kind of similar what you see at the elementary schools where the car is kind of staged for pickup and drop off. We allowed for that at every entrance that we chose, except for Brookins, as John pointed out. Parents would have to park and get out and walk the students to the door. But at Anita Purvis, there is a line where they could get out and come in, and of course we would have people coming one at a time, to allow for the social distancing, for the temperature checks and the self-certification.
Well, that's nice too with, both the Phillips Rec Center and the Anita Purvis, they're just physically set up well already for lots of distancing and people dropping off. But it's really great that we can keep this going, this option open, because if we do need to have kids with special one-on-one time with teachers, I was happy to have this at the very beginning when we were first talking about it, because it's on major bus lines, it's spread out all over the town, so people from different schools can get there. So thank you to the Park District for agreeing to this.
Yes, they were a great partner. I took a lot of their time. Randy Ashman went with me to visit all the sites where we mapped out everything. Sandy Davin, at the time we were going to be using ASCCP staff to help supervise at the sites. And so, they were great in terms of the planning and the back and forth, even needed to complete the agreement. It took quite a bit of their time, so.
I move the administrative recommendation.
Actually, I have one more question. I'm sorry. I was just wondering what impact this has on our insurance coverage. If God forbid a child got hurt, we have insurance coverages for our buildings. Would that also apply for this building?
Yes, and there is actually a space in the agreement for that. So yeah, we made sure that just like a building use, we would be utilizing their spaces kind of under a building use umbrella. So we made sure to think of that, Paul, yes. And the Park District was certain to ask too. So.
I just thought of one more thing as Paul asked that about insurance. Does this already, maybe it did, I was trying to reread the fine print. In the event that a child were to use the facility but then felt symptoms of some sort, do they have adequate places available to put that child in isolation until they can be picked up? Okay.
Yes, we talked about that. Yeah, we do. We had some isolation spaces. Now we don't have nurses in those sites. So what we were planning to do was we would have either the parent come and pick up right away, or ask someone to come over and check for symptoms. But yes, we did have a designated isolation space. I know that sounds terrible, but that's kind of like, that's what we call it.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry. I believe John had a motion there then on the floor.
I'll second.
Did you
John?
go ahead? Yeah, was I correct in that, John?
Yes.
And then
Now-
Peggy seconded.
Okay, sorry. I got my sound muted there for a second there. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion before we take a roll call? Nope. Okay, I'd like a roll call, please, Ruth Ann.
Member Carter,
Yes.
member Demet,
Yes.
member Patton,
Yes.
member Pulaski,
Yes.
member Fisher votes yes, Vice President Exum,
Yes.
and President Hall.
Yes, motion passes. Next up, Angie Franklin is going to talk to us about American Fidelity extension of flex spending claim.
Wait. Oh, okay.
Good evening, everybody. This is an option to us through the CARES Act. The CARES Act was a plan developed under COVID-19, and we work with a company called American Fidelity. And for our staff members that have flex savings accounts, flex spendings account, for our insurance, we have the option through American Fidelity to allow them to incur and submit expenses for last year's insurance plan that has ended, which was after the grace period, which was September 30th. We can allow them to incur and submit expenses through December 31st of this year. This would not be an additional cost for the district. Through the CARES Act, we recognize, and the nation recognizes, American Fidelity recognizes that many of our staff members maybe didn't use some of their flex account savings because they didn't choose to go to the doctor. Many people didn't want to leave their homes. A lot of people didn't use money for childcare during that time because they were home in the spring or home in the summer. And so I'm bringing forward to the board, because the board does have to approve it before we can allow this to happen with American Fidelity, so we don't get in trouble with them. And so I'm bringing this forward to the board to approve for us to allow our staff members to do that who have the flexible spending accounts.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Sorry, could you repeat that, Peggy? Or you?
John moved it and I seconded
I'm
it.
sorry. I was trying to unmute myself so I could hear you all. Okay. Did we have any questions at all before we take a vote on this for Angie? Nope. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Can I have roll call, please?
Member Carter,
Yes.
member Demet,
Yes.
member Patton,
Yes.
member Pulaski,
Yes.
member Fisher votes yes, Vice President Exum,
Yes.
and President Hall.
Yes, motion passes, and I'm glad that we can provide this for our employees. Okay, and now on to the hot topic for tonight, the future plans for instruction for the second quarter. I will let Dr. Ivory Tatum take it over.
Okay. So I'm going to pivot a little bit here. I know we used that word, we heard that word a couple of times in some of the public comments. So I'm actually going to pivot here. I know everybody is expecting a pretty extensive PowerPoint. The board does have that PowerPoint. So if there's specific questions, I know John already brought up the chronic truant numbers, so I'll make sure that I share those. But instead of sharing the PowerPoint, I'm going to read a statement. As you know, we have been working on plans to return to in-person learning and instruction for the second quarter. We've created several surveys of all invested stakeholders, including parents, teachers, and students. These surveys were used to gather information and input in informing our decisions to reopen with our modified hybrid model. We received an abundance of responses from parents, and I might say more than we ever have in a survey format. So I was very happy with that. So we received an abundance of responses from parents with mixed feelings of the district's reopening model, with significant numbers in favor of returning, and equally as many not certain of our reopening with the hybrid model, and also those wishing to stay full remote, which was always and still is a choice. Today, we received an emergency ruling from ISBE, specifically for districts who are in the same situation as we are. those districts that are experiencing staffing issues related to in-person instruction. Districts will now be allowed to utilize unlicensed personnel in a way we never have before. We're now able to use TAs and support staff to assist and supervise students in the school learning from a remote teacher, provided there's a licensed staff member in the building designated as their supervisor. This will be a significant support for us moving forward. In light of these new developments, my team and I will be moving forward with the plan to work with building administrators, specifically elementary building administrators, to identify those students that are disengaged or for whom remote learning has shown to be unsuccessful. I know we didn't hear from very many of those families in our public statements, but I hear from them quite often. Parents who are begging us to bring our kids back to school. This plan will include bringing small groups of our most vulnerable kindergartners, first graders, and second grade students into classrooms during their synchronous learning block. Well, they will receive support from an adult, an unlicensed personnel adult. We'll reach out to the 204 African American students that represent 53% of our chronic truant elementary disconnected remote learning students, and the 72 Hispanic students that represent 20% of our chronic truant elementary students, and come up with a plan to support them in person. This will include support for our students with IEPs and those needing language support. For grades 3 through 5, this might mean working in the learning labs, but it also will mean maybe being in some classrooms for students that might need one-on-one. And for K2, this may mean working in a small group in a classroom setting with a trusted adult, as we believe learning labs are not developmentally appropriate for kindergartners, first graders, and second graders. While our original modified plan would have put us in line with the rest of the state, the rest of our county, and our region here in Central Illinois for districts that are returning students in person, this new option will still allow us to support our most marginalized students in some way. I will move forward with engaging our teachers and our working committees to begin to develop plans to return to our full hybrid following the semester break in January, while I vigorously continue to monitor our data metrics, which I review basically every single morning. I will be reaching out to UEA and administrators for representatives from every elementary school to assist us in finalizing the hybrid plans moving forward. Thank you. So I know board members have the full PowerPoint, and it has quite a bit of information. John, I do want to address your question about our chronic truant numbers. So right now at UHS, we have much smaller, they have quite a few more students. So are they up to, let me look at Kim's, I've got it right here in front of me. Yes, about 1,200 students. So as of right now, and I've had a meeting with Mr. Corson about this, there are about 277 African-American students and 99 students, and some of our white students who have not been Zooming or Zooming regularly or participating in asynchronous work. So those students were students that we were going to intentionally invite to the learning labs. We have done that. I mean, we've been actively making phone calls. I know when we opened the learning labs, there was a huge push to get as many students there as we possibly could, and attendance has been pretty small. I'd say, it averages about 10 to 15 students a day. But with these numbers, and now that we're mid first quarter, and we have names, and we have families that we can reach out to intentionally, we're going to continue on with that plan. At UMS, we have, and of course, UMS is also, right now there are about 900 students. There are about 115 Black students, much smaller number of our Hispanic students. There are 27, and some white students. that we will reach out to. We were working to get the special education numbers in here and the EL numbers, and we ran out of time here before the board meeting, so we don't have those, but I can get those for you as well. So our plan was for UHS and UMS to bring about 10% of the population. Of course, we can only bring in groups of 50 at a time. And they would work in the learning labs, and we'll try to support them in that way. I know we tried to get parents to get students there, and we haven't had as much success. MTD is running the bus lines, so we've been offering MTD support. We have had first student pick up students who already qualify for busing, and get those students to the learning labs as well. We also use first student for the elementary learning labs. So students who want to get to the learning labs, we've been making sure that they have the ability to get there. Comments, questions?
This kind of surprises me because I thought at the last meeting, and just by looking at the attendance and everything, I didn't really think our truancy was that high.
Well, I mean, we haven't met since later in September. And the way that we're counting that is by the number of class periods that the students Zoom in for. And at the middle school and high school, it's counted a little differently because, you know, they have 8 periods. So if they miss so many, then that adds to their being added to the list for being chronic truant or chronic absenteeism. I guess that's a better word for it. Oh, you didn't unmute.
Brenda, did you have anything else?
Oh, Kim was going to make a comment.
I was just going to also add, Brenda, it's also at this point, it's 10% of the days. So when you, for example, been in session for 30 days, that's 3 or more absences at this point when you look at 10% miss. So that's what we're looking at this point.
Okay. Do you have any numbers for the elementary schools? As far as, yes.
We have the full district number, not broken down by elementary school, but we can give you it broken down by if you want to have that. So I read it in my statement, but I can say it again for elementary. We have 204 African American students, 72.
Jennifer, you're hard to hear.
Oh, sorry. My turn down. This is a district number, not broken down by school. So for the elementaries combined, and we can break it down for you by school, Brenda, if you need to see it that way. Black students, 204, the white students, 62, and Hispanic, 72. We were really fighting with Skyward to get this data. So that's why it wasn't out to you guys earlier, but we're also not just looking at chronic absenteeism for kids that we would invite in. We also are looking at the IEP students who aren't engaged, some of our low-income students that are not engaging, and definitely the EL students who need language support.
All right, thank you.
Looking at these numbers, 227 Black students at UHS. Black students constitute roughly 37% of our population. I don't know what percentage they do of the high school, but I assume it's relatively close to that. Means that a majority of our students of color are truant under this definition. And I know it's 10%, but this concerns me greatly in that a lot of what we heard tonight in terms of public input was from staff and also from people that have the wherewithal to make sure that there's a parent at home making sure that the kid is in school. This troubles me that we're backing off of in-person attendance. when these truancy rates are way beyond what we've experienced in the past when we had in-person schooling. It tells me that no matter what we do, and as hard as we try to do remote learning to be effective, that it is not as effective as in-person learning. And so I hope that, but hearing what your solution is tonight, and also understanding some of the points that were brought up by our staff. Although I have to admit, staff, please be careful when you present this stuff because it looks awfully self-serving, especially when you talk about what is concerning. And you always say staff and students, and staff always comes first. It was never students and staff. And I find that to be a little bit troubling as to what we believe in Urbana about students coming first. But there were also some good, valid points raised. But this is concerning that permanent damage is being done to our students by not being in school. This goes on much longer. It will be a distance that will be awfully, awfully hard for anybody, privileged or not privileged, white or black, people with barriers, people without barriers. It's going to be awfully hard to make up these losses.
We agree with you, John. I know if you look at the middle school, high school criteria that we were going to use, and we'll still do this. I mean, I think there's no reason why we can't continue on with our plan to target the 10% of students at the middle school and high school and bring them in groups of 50 when we, as we, in a slow transition. So things that we're looking at are the students with more than one F in the subject matter. Of course, we just talked about chronic absenteeism, students not Zooming or logging in for their synchronous sessions at all. There are some of those students. Students that routinely do not complete asynchronous tasks or assignments. And then, of course, I've already mentioned our IEP and some of our dual language and ESL students who are not engaging in the synchronous learning blocks. So those would be the students that we'd reach out to in that initial 50. And then, we have the spaces in the small gym at the high school, the large gym at the middle school. The plan was to use the West Deck at UMS and possibly one or two of the stages. And at the high school, the small gym, 2 computer labs, and maybe the library if needed.
Yeah. Jennifer, I had a quick question. What are these rates like compared to last year's? I mean, it seems like we've always had issues with truancy, and I would be curious what our rates are now compared to last year.
Well, we don't have that on the slide, but they are higher. I mean, we have to count this by the number of periods. We have to count it by the percentage, as Kim said. And I think just the number of students who might log in for 1 class out of 8, or maybe they log in for 2 of their classes, or UMS is actually not UMS, UHS, they have 4 classes a day, 2 days, twice a week, and on Wednesdays they have a shortened schedule. So if you miss, 2 or 3 classes out of your 4, that's a big part of your day when you only have the 4 classes during that 2.5 hour block. So I would say they're higher. I can get you the exact amount. The middle school and high school buildings always have a higher chronic truancy rate just because they have, triple, quadruple the number of students that the elementary campuses have. So the nice thing at the middle school and high school is we have student engagement advocates that is their main focus is attendance and truancy. And UMS and UHS have the majority of those staff members. So that's what they've been doing, is making lots of phone calls in addition to the student interventionists and and some of those other support staff people going
Okay.
to people's houses, knocking on doors, whatever.
If they could
to
even
find
track
out
them
where
down.
Yep, whatever we could do to find out why the kids aren't logging on and zooming in.
As a way to estimate, past attendance reports, if you look at the past attendance reports from past years, attendance at high school and the middle school always runs around 89, 90%. In elementary schools, it's always around 94%. So you counted 227, that's 20% of the total high school population almost, just by itself, which would put that attendance rate down around 80%. And that's just the one number. You gave a couple numbers and I failed to write them down fast enough. So for the total number of UHS students that you're putting as truant, it was 227 plus, what else did you have, Jennifer? In the other
99.
99.
I'm gonna let Kim,
So-
Kim has their daily average attendance rates too, John, so I'll let her explain that a little bit.
That'd be good.
Yeah, I don't have the PowerPoint in front of me right now, but
Oh,
I can. Okay, sorry, I was muted again. Jennifer's handed me the PowerPoint, but we just did the average daily attendance today. And so we do have a large group of students a large number of students that have missed more than 10%. But when we ran the average daily attendance for the high school, they're actually at 92%. And they have been, we're really pleased with the calls that they've been making and connecting with families. Because the other thing to note too, when we looked at their enrollment compared to previous years, the high school's only down 9 students total from where they were previously last year. So they are working hard, but we do know that there's a population of students that has missed more than they should have at this point. But just to
That's
review.
actually an improvement over past years.
Pardon me?
That's actually an improvement over past
Yeah,
years.
so that overall, we have students that are being successful. We can see that too. So I just have to note that. So just an update overall with each school's average daily attendance at this point, and this is ended September 30th. Leal's at 94.5%, DPW 89, Wiley 89, UECS at 80, Yankee Ridge 89, King 86, Thomas Paine 88, UMS is 89, and as I mentioned, UHS is at 92.
So that actually shows that what you have been telling us, that remote learning is working better for grade 6 and up, but grade 5 and below, it's not working out well because of the attendance. Looking at the attendance rate.
Yes, that's one of the reasons we were not recommending a change at the middle school, high school. We're going to just send students back through the learning labs more intentionally than, or I guess I shouldn't say more intentionally. We've been intentional. We just haven't had as much support from our families. So to have as many of our families re-engage with that as much as we could.
Do you think that it could be a connectivity problem? Some of
could
this, I
be,
mean,
and
I didn't know how the buses were working, as far as the hot spots and with them just
Sure.
being able to get online. I didn't know.
And honestly, Brenda, most of the students that come to the learning labs, that's why they're there, is because they do have connectivity issues or they need a safe, quiet place to work. There are some students who come to UHS and stay well beyond their 2.5-hour block. There's some that come early and they just go in the gym and work. They stay beyond their 1 o'clock time too. Some do, and they just sit in the gym and do their work because they do use the connectivity. We just recently, I should mention this too while we're talking about connectivity, we just recently received a digital equity grant. There were some dollars allocated to every school district, and $47,000 was provided to our district to specifically for Wi-Fi and connectivity. So Jason Grindley, who is our interim tech director, has been working with Comcast, and we are going to be able to reach even more families. We have a list of families that we have been trying to help them get signed up with Comcast, and now we have some codes that we're going to go back to those families and hopefully be able to support them with Comcast codes to get more people connected.
When a student, sorry.
I'm assuming part of this might be the fact that middle schoolers and high schoolers are more computer literate and elementary, and so if something goes wrong, we've already heard that Clever is sometimes good and sometimes difficult to navigate, but the older students probably have a much better if something goes wrong with the computer, they can fix it more rapidly than what elementary kids can.
They need very little tech support. That is true, and they seem to be handling remote learning. Not all of them, but a large majority of them are handling remote learning well.
When a student comes to a learning lab, do they need to be with their guardian or parent at all, or can they just go themselves?
The middle school and high school kids come themselves. Elementary students, we have some who walk, we have some that are dropped off, and some that come on a first student bus. So they do not have to have an adult with them to stay, if they, even the younger kids. Yeah.
Okay, so it's pretty much like remote school already. Okay, thank you.
You know, this is Peggy. I just want to follow up on something, a comment you made, John, about attendance being poorer at the elementary level than the middle school level and high school level. And really that, maybe I misunderstood what you said, but looking at the figures that Kim shared, that is really not the case. Once you take out the Urbana Early Childhood School program, the daily attendance at the elementaries is, from 85 to 95%, and the middle school's 89 and high school's 92. I see them as being quite comparable. So that's, I do want to say, I appreciate the administration responding to the input, from staff and parents and pivoting as you have. And I support the change that you're recommending, Jennifer, to maintain remote learning throughout the district for the second quarter, focusing on implementing an in-person option at the start of next semester if the conditions warrant. I know, as we've said time and again, that students are left behind academically, socially, and emotionally with an all-remote plan, which is why we agreed to review the plan at the end of the first quarter, to consider hybrid approaches that allow us to reach students more effectively. But something that's kind of been eye-opening to me, maybe not to you because you see this daily, but hearing from many parents and teachers who are talking about their Zoom experience, it's been surprising to me that in some cases, Zoom may in fact be a better learning environment when you consider the restrictions that will be posed by the pandemic. I mean, teachers who talk about being masked and how hard it is for English language learners or certain special needs children, or certain children with special needs, when you're in person and you're separated and you're masked and you're unable to do the kinds of things you do in classrooms. In some cases, the remote experience on Zoom is in fact, from what I'm hearing, a more positive and effective learning environment. Of course, Zoom compared to a real in-person, our normal in-person learning, hands down, the in-person learning is far better, but it's unclear to me if in-person with the restrictions posed by the pandemic is in fact a better learning environment in all cases, or in most cases. I mean, it's the input we've gotten has really made me think about that. That was not something I questioned up until hearing from people's recent experiences. And we heard from enough at early childhood, elementary, middle, and high school that I think there's something to that. So I'm very comfortable. Clearly, based on the survey data from parents and teachers, it doesn't appear we're ready to do that. We need more willingness on the part of our staff. And I guess my hope is that we use the second quarter to craft a plan with greater buy-in from the district. And I don't think that falls at the feet of any one person or office. I think everybody bears responsibility for buy-in. I mean, not just the administrators, our teachers and our parents. I mean, if you feel like communication isn't happening, then reach out and grab that communication. But I think buy-in is a multi-way street. It doesn't come from one direction. But anyway, my hope is that we use the quarter to get more buy-in from the district, recognizing that there's no single plan that's going to address the needs of all of our students or satisfy the preferences for all our staff. To me, options will always be essential. There will not be a single metric that will tell us now it's safe. I mean, there's a lot of subjectivity, even from the experts. So we certainly want to have the science guide us, but it can't dictate our direction because it's just not that solid. I mean, it's just not. So I hope that we'll use this semester and maybe consider a pilot like you're suggesting for the Urbana Early Childhood School. I noticed that you're considering a pilot, that we do that maybe in second semester before we scale up and spread out across all the schools. I mean, maybe that's a smart approach. I liked that you offered that. But I guess I just finally want to say that it's clear, and you all know this, that our families, teachers, and administrators are just stretched to the point of breaking. And I wish we could wave a wand to change that reality, but we can't. And I appreciate and hope for continued understanding and flexibilities from our families and staff as we try to juggle the very valid but sometimes competing needs of all those that we serve. So I do put out a plea for continued understanding and patience as we try and make our way through an impossible situation. But I support the plan that you expressed this evening, Jennifer. I think that's wise.
I strongly agree with Peggy on this. Peggy, thank you for, you are always eloquent when you speak, and it's well done. I also want to endorse the comments that I got a lot of the emails that were read tonight as part of the public presentation. We all got ahead of time and we were able to read them. But the one from Dan Bechtel I had not seen or heard until tonight. But his idea of splitting and having some set metrics that are in concert with CDC, are in concert with the local public health district. And I know that the two options that were in your PowerPoint tonight had the blessing of the public health district. But I think that there are metrics out. Peggy, I agree with you that some metrics, the ground is shaking beneath us. Everything's moving, but there are some metrics that I think Dan was correct, that we set the metrics and let the metrics do a little bit of driving of the decision so that it is not judgmental and emotional. Just if the metrics are met, we go. And then talk about student needs in crafting and how we go. I thought that was I listened carefully to that tonight, and thought it was maybe some good advice.
And I can email that to, that one did not go to the board directly. It was in the public comment email. So I can email that for board members who might have missed the detail in Dan Bechtel's public comment. I'll do that.
Yeah, and I think we also have to listen carefully to the parents, the few parents that did talk to us about how frustrating, and understand that we have disengaged parents, just like we have disengaged students. And oftentimes the disengaged students have disengaged parents. I think we need to keep that in mind. I'm a little bit surprised that some of the proponents of us not paying close enough attention to disengaged parents over in our meetings in September were not equally active and talk to us about how we need to reach out to the disengaged families and make sure that we're not doing permanent damage to social, emotional, and academic backgrounds of students that for whom distance learning is not working. I'm not sure. I would be in favor of directing our administration to not drop the ball and wait until November, December to start talking about what's going to happen in January, but that we actually get started on it right away. And I would guess that the first step, and I'm following Mr. Bechtel's advice here. The first step is we come to an agreement with our staff as to what the proper metrics are that says we're going, and then let's spend a lot of time on determining how we're going, so that maybe by before the semester / winter / holiday break, that we pretty well know what's going to happen before we come in, and then we spend the time during those 2 weeks, as some of our staff talk to us about, that it's really hard to be holding class every day, holding school every day, remote or not remote, and do all this planning at the same time. So the semester break does give us a time that if we can adjust, because I am a little bit troubled that we're going to be the only school system probably within a 100-mile radius, including Indiana. But, from Springfield to us, 100 miles in all directions, we'll be the only school that's not having some kind of in-person sessions. And that's troubling to me. That's very troubling to me that for the portion of our community that is privileged and has the economic wherewithal, has the ability to have one parent at home, this is working fine. But for families that are really struggling economically, and aren't the type of family that is normally engaged, normally a member of the PTA, normally involved with their teachers, we're letting them down. We're really letting them down, and I'm really sorry about that.
Other board members with questions or comments? I haven't heard from everybody yet.
I've heard John and Peggy both talk about at the semester, but yeah, what's in front of us is starting back October 22nd, I believe. Is that correct, Jennifer?
So no, based on the statement that I just read, and based on the number of, we're going to be experiencing some significant staffing issues or concerns, or have a major inability to be able to staff some of our classrooms. So we're not, that's why I'm not presenting the PowerPoint. We're not moving forward with the proposed timeline because we would not have enough in-person staff to be able to pull it off, basically, to be pretty frank. So we're going to pivot and go in a different direction. The ISB guidance that was shared with us today was very timely in that it will give me some flexibility to be able to utilize some of our staff in a different way, to be able to bring our students that we're most concerned about in one-on-one or small groups, or however we might be able to get students in some other spaces in our buildings in person. It won't be, classrooms with 12 to 15 kids with a teacher, so it'll look very different, but at least some of our students who need us the most will still get some support.
And so basically you don't have a timeline when you're thinking about.
I'm going to start right away. Yeah, that guidance came out today, and it's effective as of today that we can. So yeah, I'm going to pull the administrators together and at the elementary level, and we're going to run. We've got names of all these students that you're seeing in graphs and charts. We have them by name. So we're going to start looking at them individually and prioritizing need and seeing how we can support them.
One of the main things I'm worried about myself is I heard both Peggy and John talk about social emotional learning. The students have been in school remote of some sort for 28 days, I believe. And they're just now getting into a routine, whatever that routine may be. Not everybody could be at home. They might be at a child care center. They could be with a family member. We don't know that. We don't work with them every day, but they're getting into a routine. It sounds like they're forming bonds with the other students in their class online, their teachers. And my concern is just to make that huge change. How many are we going to lose in that process? Because we all know when students do come back into the schools, it's not going to be a typical kindergarten room. It's not going to be a typical second or third grade room. It's going to look totally different. It's going to basically be so institutionalized because we are not able to have a lot of things in the classrooms that teachers had before to use to make learning fun for all children. And it's going to be a lot different. I understand that, but I am worried about how the students are going to feel getting out of that routine. So I would just hope if and whenever you have a plan in place with this new information from ISB, that we take all of that into consideration. Because if I had a student right now, I would be worried. I would be all for the remote personally, and I would make one way or the other, whether it was me not working or someone else, I would make sure they were online learning remotely for their health and safety.
So anybody that we invite in, Brenda, if they're in a space that works for them, we're not going to kind of mandate that they come. I mean, we're only going to, bring students in whose families indicate they want the additional help. If they're, like you said, if they're comfortable someplace in a child care with grandma or wherever they are, we would let them, of course, continue in what is successful for them. This would be more for the students that aren't experiencing success right now, and whose parents, we have some parents who don't have the learning capabilities to help the kids at home, and so those students, this would be a place where an adult could help them with their asynchronous work or their synchronous work.
One thing that I am very surprised that ISB came out with that statement saying, obviously, I think they're realizing that there's going to be a teacher shortage. I mean, we had problems before the COVID trying to get subs into our buildings. And I think now that's just kind of exacerbated the whole thing. But one thing I worry about is like what the numbers are going to be. And if these non-certified professionals, did I say it right?
Not unlicensed, yes. Non-licensed staff.
Okay.
Yep.
So one of the things that concerns me is like what the numbers will be. And, if they're working with a teacher who is remote, would there be someone for them to contact if they needed help right away in that class?
So they'll still get their learning from their teacher. So, they'll come to the school and still be engaged in the synchronous learning time with the teacher.
Right.
They'll just be an additional adult there to help them when they're, maybe disengaged or not understanding what's going on, or maybe to help keep them focused. We've heard some stories of some of the third, fourth, and fifth graders who are in the learning labs who struggle with attention. It's hard for them to sit that long in front of a computer. It's different when you're at home and you have a mom or dad or an adult there kind of helping you stay focused. But when you are in a situation where you don't have that, these adults would kind of help the kids stay focused on their synchronous work. And I honestly, this emergency rule, I think it is in response to districts like us, who want to move to some type of in-person learning and may not have the staff where that might be experiencing staffing issues and not have the means to be able to do that. So I believe that is why ISB, and again, I'm very surprised too that this came out today, but I think that is what it is in response to, that there are are situations where districts experience staffing issues related to return to in-person, which is our situation.
Yeah, another thing that I was kind of concerned about, this is an emergency, what did you call it? Emergency disaster?
Emergency ruling, yes. And I sent you guys
Okay.
the exact language. I can
And-
send you the long, it's about 12 pages long, the actual,
And this
the
is
actual,
is this from the governor? Because I didn't think that I thought that was done.
it's from
emergency-
ISB, the State Board of Education.
Right, State Board of Education, yeah. One of the other things that I'm sorry, I'm just looking at a couple questions that I had written down. I had emailed you earlier, Jennifer. Let me just take a quick look here. What if a lot of students want to come back? Do you have a lottery system on how you're going to divide students up per grade, per classroom?
So the plan was for elementary is we were going to send out a survey where we were going, like right now, the survey data was 50-50 at basically every single level. So, but again, it was an anonymous survey, so parents didn't have to indicate who they were or who their child was. So we are going to send out a survey to every elementary family and ask them again if you're interested in person or staying remote, because the remote was still an option, of course. And if a family said, yes, I would like to send my student back to school, they would have to say who they are, who their child was, what grade they were in. And then we were going to work, ask them another question about busing, if they needed transportation. So that was the original plan based on in this modified hybrid version, is to re-engage the parents and ask every parent what their intention was. For the parents who wanted to stay remote, who hadn't made that decision earlier in the year, we had about 20% of our people who turned in paperwork for to be all remote. And so we suspected that there would be more people who would want to do that. So we were going to make that paperwork available again and open that process up again so parents could resubmit, or they could submit new paperwork to stay remote for the rest of the semester if that's what they chose to do. We don't have to do that now because we're going to keep the students in the current situation that they're in and not make a drastic change at this time.
Okay.
But that was the plan.
I was also kind of surprised that in either of your options, option 1 or option 2, which is no longer on the table, correct? I was surprised about that there was nothing in there for if somebody did test positive. What would happen then, as far as like, would a whole building shut down? Would just a grade level or a classroom? I didn't see anything towards that. Also, the other thing that kind of concerned me is, I know there's a difficult time sometimes trying to get a hold of a parent or guardian when a child is sick, and often that child is at school all day, even though they're ill. And my concern is, if a child were to test positive or whatever, there's a lot of what ifs in this. I understand. I don't mean to be like a Debbie Downer, but I'm just curious what your procedure would be if someone did test positive at a school, someone either being a staff or a student.
Yeah, so we have all that in our original plan, Brenda. So in the phase 4 plan from August, we didn't incorporate it into this because we kind of talked about that a lot. But in our full hybrid plan, we have the quarantine scenarios are there. We have all the what ifs that you just mentioned. If a child tests positive or a staff member tests positive, when we put students in classrooms in quarantine and how long they stay in quarantine, all of that is in that original plan. It's about 50 pages. So it's got a lot of information.
Back in August, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So we didn't kind of, like you said, beat a dead horse and reiterate all that again.
Right.
But yeah, all of that is in the original plan related to how we contact the parent, how where we put the student while we're waiting to hear from the parent. All of that is in part of that original guidance.
How did the virtual parent-teacher conferences go?
Well,
Have you
mine
had
were
those?
awesome. I had great student-led conferences. All of my teachers rock. But Kim is collecting the data. I don't know, do you have it yet around percentages? I think it just varied. Yeah, we're
Okay,
still having those I mean, it was just last Friday. So in
right.
a typical year, we always have the secretary send us in the engagement numbers in terms of how many families signed up, how many participated. So those are still coming in from the buildings. But I've heard mixed reviews. I've heard that some buildings had great attendance, and others not as much. So I think it just depended. But it was different, sitting in the Zoom with your kid, and it was interesting. I know I'm kind of digressing now, but even for my own kid at the high school, because a lot of the students don't use their video, so every single teacher said, "It's so good to see you," because they hear the
Exactly.
kids. Sometimes they get to see their faces, but with the older students, they're there and they're doing what they need to do, but they're not always on camera. So, but yeah, I think with the situation, many of the teachers did the best they could. So, but yeah, we'll have those numbers like we'll track them. We won't be able to compare them like we typically do from year to year.
Right.
We kind of look at those numbers and say, in comparison to years past, that it was successful or not, because it definitely is not comparing apples and apples. So,
Mhm. All right, thank you.
yep.
Other questions from board members?
Yes, I've got a question. Jennifer, on this survey that was blasted out to families, how many families does it go to?
So it went to everyone. I mean, literally every family member in the district would have gotten it. I sent it out via Skylert probably 3 times. I shared the links with administrators and asked them to share the survey. I asked administrators to pass it on to teachers so they could share the link, as they were communicating parent-teacher conference info. Technically, the survey was supposed to close on Friday, but we kept it open over the weekend, and maybe about 100 more people took it over the weekend. So we didn't close it until yesterday afternoon. So
Yeah, but again, do you have a figure on how many families that blasts out to?
every family. So we've got 4,500 kids. So every single kid their family member would have gotten it.
Got it.
Early
And
childhood through high school.
then how many responses came back?
So we had 1,100. Let me check. It changed daily, of course. I think we had I know this says 1096, but I think that is the number from, I didn't update this in the final version from when I sent it to you, but it was about 1150, which is great for us for a survey.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, because I was just wondering who was driving this train at the end of the day. If we're getting enough responses and hearing from enough people, and because it's being blind and not they don't come back with a name attached. Basically, it's hard to see who the ones are that constantly do like to do the surveys. So I just want to encourage every family, when you get an email like that, go ahead and do it. Jennifer, on an average, well, all surveys are different. All of them have different questions, so on and so forth. How many questions are usually asked? How long do you think somebody could sit and answer a survey? I mean, if you give me something that's going to take more than 10 minutes out of my time, I'm probably not going to do it. So that's where I'm going with my question.
Oh yeah, we definitely
nice and Sweet.
Short
point.
and to the point. Yes. So a couple,
Okay.
couple multiple choice and then maybe one or two short answers. So I would say it shouldn't have taken anybody more than 10 minutes.
Okay. I just would encourage everybody to take the survey. Just please, we don't know who you are, but we still need your voices. We need everybody, just everybody to fill out these surveys when they come to you. Don't think that it's not going to matter, because it just does. And for the parents who want their kids back in schools, I feel your pain. I totally understand. And please, we're not hearing from enough of you. We know you're out there. Please let us know. Let the superintendent know your feelings about this. Just don't think that it's not going to matter, because it does. The minority who are not speaking up, who want to be back in the classroom, need to let us know what you want. The 60-40, whatever, it's turned out to be, so on and so forth, let's bring it up to 50-50, or put yourselves up to the 60%, or 75% mark. Let us know how much you feel your child needs to be back in their environment, their element. If you really think that's the best for your child, we need to know these things.
Yeah, we had over 500 people who said they'd send their students back, but we heard from very few of those people tonight. So I would agree with you, Ruth Ann, 100% on that.
Yes, please. When I'm thinking right now, my biggest connection about knowing what something is going on in a different state is with one of my grandchildren. She goes to county school. Let me get this right. 5,200 students in the county, and more than half started in August in the schools, and more have come in since then, because the parents wanted their kids back in school. The remote wasn't working for them, and their kids just wanted to go see their friends. Now, Sela goes to school with multiple masks to switch out during the day. They have been full-time on, and this is the kicker, 7:30 a.m. is start time and 2:30 p.m. is end time. And it's been that way like regular school schedule. And they started off with 60% of the population wanting to go back into school, which I believe I've said before, held up the start of school because they were not expecting that much participation. And it has grown after that. But they are doing the remote. They're doing the in school, and things are going very well, and at some point, I know I'm going to get hated for that, and that's okay. It's my job to be hated and to take it. That's what we signed up for, basically. The most thankless job in the whole world, and we don't get paid for it, people. We get candy at our places during a meeting, but we don't get paid for all the verbal abuse, but we take it. We do. But the big thing is when are we going to do this? And is when going to be in January? Or is when going to be in another 2 years? I don't know where I want to be on a lot of this stuff. I just don't. I totally understand everybody's position. And, that's one of the reasons why I couldn't vote on you know, what we voted on last time, but we need to hear from everybody. And let's all remember, when is this going to happen? When are we going to let it happen? And, you know, go ahead and, like I said, hate me for saying it, but when are we going to do this? And I don't need a real direct answer, but you've got my email connections. Oh, and by the way, the answering machine at the house is still not working. So you have to email me to let me know. Thanks.
We've talked a lot about our students of color and our low-income students, but the other piece of some of the emails we got was very difficult to read because I don't get emotional about some stuff, but there was one email in particular that I got upset me greatly, and that has to do with special ed. If students are if you're going to come up with this plan for these unlicensed led classrooms, they're not classrooms, but will the consultants, our therapists and so forth also be available for those children during the day?
I guess I don't want to say that they will be, John. I think there were some of our staff members who were comfortable coming back. So I think it would just depend on who might be willing to do that at this point. So a lot of them are doing teletherapy and connecting with their students remotely. So I imagine many of them will continue doing that based off of, you know, the emails that we heard tonight and the many texts and messages and phone calls that I've received. So I don't know. I mean, that's a really good question.
Well, hearing about special needs children making significant advances because of the quality of our special education offerings, Todd, thank you. And then hearing about backsliding that could end up being, could take years to recover from is heart-wrenching. And if I was that parent, I'd be writing the same way that this parent wrote. And I know that parent is not the only parent in the district that feels that way. So I'm hoping that we'll be aggressive in calling back as many folks as we can and as rapidly as we can. So.
Jennifer, can I ask you a question about a number of teachers mentioned, well, parents both and teachers mentioned in their sharing about their experience with remote learning, that teachers are trying to fine tune their use of Zoom to optimize learning. And many of, they're, expanding their ways of using it. And the question came up many times about why we restrict the use of breakout rooms on Zoom. And I was told it was for security reasons, but I guess I wanted to hear more about that because I know we have parent volunteers who've been vetted to supervise in person who maybe work in hallways or in libraries without the direct supervision of a teacher. And so I wondered why we aren't willing to allow that with Zoom.
So we've restricted the use to our staff because they've been cleared and, working with our students. I heard that as an idea. We've not explored that widely, Peggy, using volunteers to be in Zooms. I mean, they'd have to be cleared and background checked, and we wouldn't allow them to be in Zooms by themselves with kids, just like we are asking our own staff not to be alone in breakout rooms with our students for obvious reasons. But that definitely is something that we can look at. I did hear that in several of the comments. Some parents, I actually heard some parents who volunteered, who typically do come into the classroom and volunteer in the classroom, would be willing to help teachers So that would be a good viable option to include when we move to more of a hybrid model.
Yeah, it just seems like it allows them to individualize instruction. And if we're going to be doing this Zoom for, looks like several more months,
Mm-hmm.
good to give that tool to teachers to individualize learning better using Zoom. So I appreciate your consideration of that.
Mm-hmm.
Other board members, I don't know if Paul or Tori want to offer any questions.
No, I mean, I think you guys covered most of the questions I had. I really want to appreciate both how hard you worked on coming up with a plan to try to give something to everybody, but also the willingness to change gears when it became obvious it wasn't going to work out right now. So thank you for your work.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Paul.
I don't know, Tori, did you have anything you wanted to ask?
No, I asked several questions in advance and got answers to those questions. And, I think that we are going in the appropriate direction. So I am good. Thank you, though.
Well, I had a couple that came up as other board members were talking. One was with Ruth Ann's question about getting the surveys in. And I know how hard it is to get those turned in. And are we able to reach our ESL families, our dual language families? And I'm presuming that everything's being translated into French and Spanish for our families who need it. But are we seeing information that those are the families who are also struggling with getting the remote learning done, or just juggling the kids and stuff? That's one subgroup. Another subgroup of people who I've heard from teachers are having trouble connecting are the brand new ninth graders for sure. I don't necessarily know if the brand new sixth graders too, because they've moved to a different building and they've got whole new systems of, classrooms and teachers and stuff. And the numbers that you brought of the non-attendance, I wondered, are they a higher proportion than what we thought they would be, or the numbers what we thought they would be for those kids who are still trying to find their way in high school and middle school for the first time? That was one question.
You want to do the ninth grade? Okay.
Yeah, I think that, typically you will see, it just getting, because of that transition, or at the secondary level, as Dr. Ivory Tatum mentioned, when students' attendance is taken every class period, that is common. You'll see some trends like that. And with the support in the buildings, you're able to redirect that a little bit. So I think it's definitely higher now, but it's common to see a percentage of students that become disengaged when there's more mobility throughout the day, and we'll continue to monitor that.
About the surveys. So yeah, everything that we send out via survey is translated. So when you go in, you can choose your language. I know there was a WCIA story this morning where a parent shared that the information shared on the Spanish version of the survey was different, I guess, is what I was told. But I have our Spanish parent liaisons translate everything for me, and they're wonderful. I mean, I send things to Mitzi and Lucia, and they get things back to me like, immediately. So it helps me be able to move forward quickly with communication because of that. So yeah, we translate everything, and I would have to say the participation from some of our Spanish-speaking families is not what we would like it to be. I've talked to Lucia about that and just kind of tried to brainstorm, and what her response has been is that a lot of those families just do not connect electronically, and we send out messages about meals and all kinds of communication, and it's all digital. It's an email, or it's a skyward message that says, please check your email from an important message from Urbana School District. And it doesn't always make that connection to some of our Latino families. So I've talked to Lucia about better ways to do that. They have their own Facebook communication, which I think serves serves a lot of those families better. And they go directly through that. And a lot of it is word of mouth. I mean, our parent liaisons are out in the mobile home communities daily, weekly. So I know they do a lot of sharing of information for us, basically on foot, you know, taking it to the families that they know need it the most. So I wish I could say, yeah, that we have, you know, we had a great turnout from the Spanish speaking families. It was in the 40s. I think the last time I saw it was about 45, and I can go back and look, which is, you know, not great considering the numbers. I did hear that somebody said that the Spanish survey didn't work. And there was a glitch in it for a day or two, and Lucia right away texted me and said, hey, did you know that the Spanish survey, something glitchy was happening? And so I went in that night and fixed it, which was another reason why we kept the survey open over the weekend, because, you know, those families lost a day, maybe 2 days of seeing it. So we kept it open a little longer just to accommodate for that.
And a thought occurred to me. I don't even know if it counts as truancy for the logins. I've heard from teachers who say, yeah, they log in and then, you know, their screen is muted, or they've turned off their camera and they're not there. They walk off into another room or something, and they're not. If that happens, does that count as non-attendance, or is, you know, teachers, since they can't really 100% be certain? I mean, you know, there's a lot of non-engagement that they're logged in, but they've gone off, or they're playing their video game, or they're doing whatever and not actually doing the classwork. So, you know, technically, I guess they're logged in, but they're not doing the work. Does that count?
So they can log into Zoom, and if, for example, so I'll answer that a couple ways. So if they're not able to connect, but then they still, if the student will interact with the teacher at a later time, they can also, and that's at all levels, and then also complete the asynchronous work, they can gain that attendance back. But to answer your question, if they are logged in, but then you know, not showing their video, then what teachers should be doing is posing questions in the chat. Or I know at the high school in particular, there's been some teachers that have shared with us Pear Deck, and they're able to pose questions, and through those questions gain student understanding. And it's different than a regular poll, because you can tell exactly which students are answering it. So that's another method that they are able to see if that interaction's taking place. If it's not, if a student's not responding, then yeah, that could be a factor, you know, so that they're not just checking in and then off to do something else.
Okay, so I'm sorry to keep going on for so long. I just had a couple more questions, and that was, you've already answered a lot of them. So one thing I did hear from the teachers was, and just to say, I'm really glad that you guys were able to pivot so fast. And I echo everybody else's sentiments. Thank you so much for all of the work you've already done. And then all of a sudden having to go whoop, and you know, it's the name of the game for all of us, I know. But one thing that I did hear about using this time that we're remote and then thinking about next semester is, can we be proactive and think of ways that, if, you know, instead of planning for just the hybrid model, can we also then use the time to plan for a robust remote plan again for second semester if it happens, and use the time for planning for that to be asking for pilot programs, asking teachers what kind of ideas have you come up with that's working in your classroom, and would you be willing to share that with the rest of the district for models that we could use maybe next semester? Because I mean, the fact of the matter is, I want everybody to go back. We all do, but there's a very real possibility that we'll still be remote as of 2021. And so are we being,
Don't say that.
I know, I don't want to jinx it, I'm sorry, but you know, I have to be a realist about it. And if, you know, with cold and flu season upon us being like bearing down, that's just like adding to the horrible mix. And I just want to know that we're going to be as proactive as possible to cover all of our bases. And so that if we actually do have to stay remote, we do it as well as we possibly can. And we pilot some great programs, and we do some new things. I know our teachers are coming up with new teaching models that they've had to learn on the fly, or that they've developed themselves or whatever. And if they can use that PD time and other time in the coming months to practice that, I just want us to be able to succeed in every possible arena that we have to face.
Sure.
So that's more of a comment than a question, but I heard that suggestion from a teacher and I thought that's a really good idea. And I know, like I've heard from the after school people, that they've been working their butts off since March to just try and learn everything they possibly can that's out there. And so I know that all the staff who they have it in them to do this, and if they're given the opportunity, they'll really wow us with something new. So I would love for our district to be that district that, hey, we can do it better than everybody else. So but that's it. The only other thing I had to offer was just I want us to all be careful about. I think it's a great idea to try and offer extra support to the students who are not engaging, and we just have to be very careful and mindful that that's not seen as something punitive, or that messaging or rumors or whatever go out that it's a mandatory thing. I don't want people to think that their kids are going to be targeted or forced to do something they're not comfortable with. I know that's not our intent. I want everybody else out there to know that that's not the intent. The intent is to boost up the kids who really need the help. We need to make sure we stay with that messaging and we keep that going so that people are on board with it when kids need extra help, that's why it's being done, and be really careful about how that message is crafted.
Yep.
So,
And we want to work with the families too, because we want to help build their capacity
absolutely.
around how to support their kids at home, because there might come a time, you know, when we're heavy in the flu season where nobody's moving, or you know, we could go back into a shutdown at some
I
point.
know.
God forbid that were to happen, but it could. And so we want to boost capacity and build the capacity of our families to be able to help students at home as much as we can too. Or like you said, find creative avenues where we can still support students remotely. We just some of them, we just need to get them engaged,
Yeah.
experience it,
Oh,
because
yeah.
there are some that just aren't experiencing it at all. So
Yep.
just just try a Zoom, come in, and our teachers are doing a really good job with it. So I think some of our students just aren't feeling it
I know. Well,
at
hey,
all.
a lot of us grown-ups aren't feeling it,
I know.
whatever feeling it is, whether it's getting out of bed in the morning, going to
Yep.
work or whatever. I totally sympathize. Well, I don't have any other questions, and I'm really pleased with this new plan. So I think we've heard everything we need to hear. Is there this isn't voted on tonight. Do we need to vote on this tonight? It's just a study topic, right? Or is
Well,
this
we're not
just
really voting on anything.
no, it's just a recommendation,
Yep, a
and you want, well,
recommendation, and I think we've heard from everybody that we'll move forward, and I'll pull together the support teams that I can get together, and we'll work with administrators to start identifying some students
Okay.
who could benefit from some in-person one-on-one small group.
I'm really excited to get more people in those learning labs because we've worked so hard to get them set up, and to hear that they're not being used is I want them to be full and have kids waiting to get in there
I
because
agree. I
they're,
want to see them full too. Yeah.
yeah.
I
And
think the kids who were there, it is a huge help for them. We just have to get more students in there. So yeah, I
yeah.
agree.
Hey, it's not having mom and dad breathe down the back of your neck, guys. Come
Mhm.
on and sit in the gym for an hour.
Yep.
All right, thank you. And thanks. I approve moving forward. So
Okay.
with that said, we'll move on the agenda. We're at 11.0, and there is no call for future special or executive meetings at this time. So then we will move back to you, Jennifer, for
So superintendent
superintendent's report.
report. All right. I was just getting ready to pull it up. We do have quite a lot to share tonight. Some good things happening. Whoops, I forgot to share my screen first before I pulled up the PowerPoint. Oh, this is different. I'm so used to having both of my my monitors when we Zoom. So I'm figuring it out. So can everybody see that? Are the Urbana better together? Okay.
Yep.
So first, we'd like to congratulate our National Merit Scholarship semifinalists and commended students. Phoebe Gerstenecker is one of our, well, she is our National Merit Scholarship semifinalist. So we're looking forward to hearing more about where Phoebe lands in the National Merit Scholarship follow through for the rest of the year. And then Faza Garada is our National Merit Commended student. So congratulations to both of those UHS students. So yay. And if you have not voted yet, please come out and vote. You know, it is, before we know it, it will be time to do that. This was, we collaborated with our, some of our families. Kanitha brought the pledge to vote by, and we all made our pledge to vote. And so I just want to share that. I'm not going to play the video in the interest of time, but we've been trying to help people get to know our SROs a little bit more. So if you've not had an opportunity to see the video online about SRO Robinson, and I know there was a great article about her in the paper, I'd encourage you to go. They've been participating in some of our administrator workshops, and so we're getting to know them as well. So that has been good. So go on our website and look at that video story. Congratulations to Janet Gilbert. She is a TA at UMS who recently retired. She planned to start the year, and I think when we came back and ended up coming back full remote and she wasn't able to work with students, she decided to go ahead and retire after 21 years in our district. So it was sad to see Miss Gilbert go, but we wished her the best. And she was a teaching assistant at Urbana Middle School for a really long time. So there she is with Dr. Weemout there. So congratulations, Ms. Gilbert. United Way, the Book It Forward program, we collected donations. So this is Tyler McKinney and Tony, and the Urbana Tiger went and helped collect books. So we appreciate United Way and all the people in the community who brought books to the United Way and on behalf of Urbana School District. So the Early Childhood Center and every elementary school received a box of books donated from people in the community. And we really appreciate the effort and making sure that we have books in the hands of students while they're at home remotely. Hispanic Heritage Month story times have also been posted. So I read a story. This is, I think that's Miss Delgado, and she read a story. So several of these videos have been posted, and Hispanic Heritage Month is running through October 15th. So if you want to see some of those stories or hear a bedtime story, please check those out online or on our website. Again, we just wanted to reiterate the meals, our breakfast and lunch program. We're continuing on with those. We just want to put that out as much as we can. We're starting to see attendance die down a little bit, so we just wanted to remind families. We are still providing breakfast and lunch Tuesdays and Thursdays at every building from 11 to 1. And we're still making deliveries out to our mobile home sites. So I don't know if people were wondering, like, oh, you know, what with all the talk about if we were coming back to school or not, if people thought maybe the meal service, you know, maybe wasn't as happening, but we want to see those numbers go back up, and we want to feed more families. So come out and get your breakfast and lunch and several meals during the week. And we've been sending this message out pretty frequently throughout the district. Don't wait to get your flu vaccine. So we sent a message out from the public health department. They shared information with us, encouraging people to get their flu shot. And this info has also been shared and is on our website for families and for staff to find a low cost, no cost way to get their flu vaccine. So that is it for me. Thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Avery Tatum? Nope. Okay. Well, move on to board reports. Do we have any board reports for this evening?
I just wanted to talk briefly. We had a very good virtual dinner meeting with the Illinois State Board of Education, and it was rather interesting. They talked quite a bit about the remote learning. So we're going to, since our joint annual conference in Chicago is canceled due to the COVID, I signed up. I will be taking some classes on how I'm virtually going to do the delegate assembly. And I'm very happy that they're offering different webinars on how we're going to partake in that. So also, I just wanted to let everybody know I am not going to run for office again. So it's that time again. I'm in Subdistrict 1. If anybody's interested, you can pick up a form, probably call ahead or something, or inquire at Brookins and get a form, and you can get signatures and get on the ballot. You never know. It's been great, but I feel like I don't have any children in the schools anymore, and I've been on for several years, so I'm ready to kind of move on in a different direction now.
Thanks, and I'll kind of follow up with Brenda. This is Peggy Patton. Just to remind listeners that the terms of 4 members of the school board will be up up for election April 6th, 2021. And that's sub-districts 1, 3, 5, and 7. I will also not be seeking re-election as representative of sub-district 5 at the end of my 3rd term in April. And as Brenda said, to get on the ballot, interested candidates must collect 50 valid signatures from registered voters in the sub-district they're running in. And those signatures must be filed with the Champaign County Clerk's Office the week of December 14th to 21st of this year. So now's the time to be getting signatures. You can get information on the Champaign County Clerk's website about collecting signatures, good information on the website of the Illinois Association of School Boards. And on our own website, the USD 116 website, you can get information about the sub-district boundaries, because as I said, it's sub-districts 1, 3, 5, and 7 that will be up for election on April 6th, 2021. Don't have to remind listeners that our locally elected school board is an essential component of our community public schools. So we ask that you help us spread the word and consider school board service. We also hope to we'll have this information posted on the USD 116 website soon, and it will include links to the resources I mentioned, to the Champaign County Clerk's website, to the Illinois Association of School Boards, and then the sub-district boundary information. So please, again, help us spread the word and consider school board service.
One more quick note is that these offices are for 2-year terms because we're hitting the end of our diennium. So it's a 2-year commitment, not the typical 4-year commitment.
Oh, thank you, Paul. I did not realize that. That's true in every case, in all 4.
All 4 seats are 2-year terms. So then the following election, all 7 seats will be available.
Well, that's going to be tricky. Okay.
All 7 seats will be available, and there'll be a lottery done.
Right.
Yeah, half of them will be 2-year, half of them will be 4-year.
Got you. Thank you for that important information.
And once we get the census numbers, there might be a possibility that sub-district boundary lines might need to be redrawn.
Most definitely probably will have to be redrawn.
Yep. 5% up or 5% down difference from the last time, if it happens. A lot's gonna happen.
I have a board report too when you're ready.
Okay, I'm done.
Go ahead, John.
One of the comments from the input that we got in the last couple of days really hit home with me, which is that if we're expecting our staff and our teachers to meet in person, that I think it's time that we take a look at our technology. I know the reason why we're spread out all over is because of the availability of technology to put us on the TV. But I think it's time that we take a look at what's required to get the board back to meeting in the boardroom.
So John, we talked about that. We've been talking about that. Randy had some ideas. I don't know if you've been to UMS and seen the plexiglass, what do you call them, Randy? Like stands or?
Yeah, just little dividers.
Little dividers, that's a good word. And we use those in the buildings. They're kind of on wood and they stand, freestanding. So we've talked about, because we're really limited in our space. And I don't know if the public realizes that, but one of the reasons we continue when we're even in this room to meet through Zoom is because of the feedback issues we have with the sound and the technology limitations that John spoke to. So we've talked about maybe an admin would be able to sit not here and allow board members to come back and spread out a little bit more. We don't have to, all of our administrators can, we can kind of use the spaces out there, and then we can use the plexiglass dividers. We were going to kind of pilot it tonight. We decided, we didn't go over and pick them up from the middle school, but that was something that we've talked about, John, that we can put these kind of dividers in between you guys up here, and we can spread out, administration can spread out throughout the room a little easier. Board members can recapture the seats.
Either that, or let's take a look at different venues that are already set up, if that's easier. So,
okay, that's an idea too.
But I think, I think it's time. I think it's time that we start taking a look at ourselves before we start asking things of other people.
I agree with that, John. Thanks.
Well, thank you. I don't, any other board reports? I think we're good there. So if there are none, then we need a motion to go into closed session. We'll have a short recess just to take a quick potty break, water break, whatever. But first we need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved. I motion to go into closed session.
Oh, do I need to read out the reason again?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And we also need to indicate that there'll be no action
No
followed.
action after too.
Yep. Okay, thank you. So I need a motion to go into closed session for the purposes of discussing the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the district, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired. And as John said, there will be no action after tonight's exec session. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Do I have roll call, please?
Member Carter,
Yes.
Member Demmett,
Yes.
Member Patton,
Yes.
Member Plosky,
Yes.
Member Fisher votes yes, Vice President Exum,
Yes.
and President Hall.
Yes, motion passes. We are now in closed session, and I would like to have a 5-minute recess, please.
Yes.
Okay, we'll see you back in 5 minutes, everybody.
5 minutes.
So Carol and Randy, are you guys just stay on?
Yep, just stay right here.